Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another week of 3 Point Weekly. We got some news today on top of all of the regular season stuff to talk about this week, with the Bulls seemingly finally looking to move off of some of their star talent with Zach Lavine, and the Bulls now being open to a trade that would involve him moving out of Chicago. Of course, we got lots to talk about around the league as well, from the Timberwolves and the Rockets being some of the best teams out west, to the Warriors really struggling outside of Curry, and now Curry missing some time, to the 76ers looking like an even better team with James Harden off of the roster, and plenty more outside of that. But before we do get into that, be sure to hit that like button down below and be sure to subscribe to the channel so you can continue to hear our thoughts throughout the rest of the NBA regular season. But before we get any further into it, we have to discuss the news of the day. And that has got to be very good news for Chicago Bulls fans, is that Zach Lavine seemingly will no longer be in Chicago long term. He's not far off signing that new deal, a deal that kind of pushed them in this direction where they were going to be continuing to compete for a while. Seemingly, even though they just paid Vooch last summer, they're finally starting to realize that that might not be ideal. So I'll get your thoughts first, Gabe. Evidently, I'm sure that as the guy who pushes the purgatory narrative a lot, you've got to be happy about this. So give me your thoughts, and where do you think Zach could end up going after a stint in Chicago?
So I want to give a special shout out to two people that are very near and dear to my heart. Mo and Garrett. I know you two are celebrating somewhere right now. Whether you guys see this video or not, I'm sure. Those are the two closest Bulls fans to me. And I know from a Bulls fan's perspective, from them, they're definitely ready to see some changes. The way that team has been over the past couple years of just the lack of direction from, are we cultivating Kobe White and Patrick Williams in a young core, or are we trying to compete with DeRozan and Zach and Vucevic? And they decided they wanted to try and compete, but it didn't really work out. And so they ended up in that, they were a play-in team last year, didn't end up getting out of that. And this year don't look to be much better. And it's I think it's about time, because they're at a place where they have valuable assets. Like we see the rumors about Zach Lavine, but if it goes beyond him, if it's DeMar, if it's Vucevic, if it's Caruso, we know Caruso can get you something good, something that you're going to like, because a contender will go out and get him. A nice perimeter defender, a nice depth guy. That's a guy you want on your team if you're trying to make a push. Same thing. We talked when Vucevic got that extension, one of the main things we said, hey, contract might not be great, but it's very movable. And in that case, that's another good sign for them. Only bad thing is Patrick Williams hasn't been looking great. So if they go towards a rebuild, I don't know if he's the building block that they might have thought he was. But either way, even if he doesn't pan out, if they go more in a rebuild direction, I think it's only a win for them, because their ceiling is very low compared to most teams. So I'm with it. I'm 100% with it. As far as where Zach Lavine goes, I'm just going to go with my gut and say he's a Laker, because the Lakers haven't been as strong as they might have thought to start the season. And we know how Pelinka can get. Name chase, make a bad decision, might go out and get after him. That's my hot shot guess. So get the jersey swaps ready. But from the Bulls side, I like it.
I think those jersey swaps are already on the internet from a couple off seasons ago. But I agree, Gabe. Of course, we like seeing a team that's been in this kind of middle ground, pick a direction, and hopefully they do follow through with it. And this is not just rumors that turn into John Collins type stuff that just drags, and it's he never gets traded. So hopefully it does happen. I think I saw Kenny tweet earlier, it kind of sucks that they decided to do this now when last year's draft class was so good, but I don't even think they had their pick this past draft.
Jed Howard was the Chicago pick.
Yeah, so it's rough. This upcoming draft isn't as great, but you gotta start somewhere, right? And the Bulls obviously have not been good this season. They were a mid-team last year, and I applaud them for the way that they tried to rebuild their team. I mean, they were aggressive in making trades to go get Vucevic, to go get Alonzo Ball, to get a DeMar DeRozan. I applaud the front office for trying, and they got that one season where they did make the playoffs, and when they were fully healthy, they were a good team. But it's the NBA. Stuff happens. Injuries happen. They haven't been able to recover from it. So Zach Lavine is your best asset, and he can probably get you the best return. Like Gabe mentioned, Caruso is one of those guys too. Maybe a team would take on a DeMar, but if not, you're off of his contract this offseason. So it's good to start now, kind of swallow your pride and be like, okay, if we want to be a good team down the line, we kind of have to just accept our fate, move off of these guys, move off of Zach Lavine, and just try and assess the assets that you can potentially get back and see where it goes from there. Gabe said the Lakers. I mean, obviously the Lakers are always going to be in those talks, especially with those rumors of Pelinka and them wanting a third star. But the market will be very interesting. Like Philly made those moves, in the James Harden trade, so they got some extra assets. They could be a player. Maybe the Miami Heat could get in there. Like, there's some teams that could definitely make a little bit of noise in the Zach Lavine market. So it's definitely something that could shake up the league just a little bit.
Yeah, I think there'll definitely be a lot of teams interested. I mean, we've already mentioned a few teams. I think the Knicks are another team that could look to throw their hat in, like we've talked about over the past or the offseason. They have so many first-round picks over the next few years. I think 4 going into next year's draft. So they're kind of primed to want to move off of some of those eventually. I doubt they're drafting 4 guys next year. So they have to do something eventually. The Magic could be a sleeper team that's not really as competitive right now, but does need to reposition what they're doing at the guard position a little bit. They need to move off of some defense and bring in some offense, because even as we saw tonight in the first quarter against the Nets, the defense is great and it's been great. They're a top 5 defense for the majority of the season, but they can't shoot. And they have spells where they'll have a 15, 18-point quarter, and they still really struggle down the stretch. So Lavine's a guy that could be looking there. The Pistons is another team that's been rumored. I don't love that for them yet, but there's a lot of teams that could be interested. There's always guys that are going to want his shooting. Now, of course, the lack of playmaking, the lack of defense, the fact that as your second option, like he's been a lot of time in Chicago, probably not ideal, but there's still a lot of teams that are really going to value that level of scorer and three-point shooter, and rightfully so. I just hope now for Chicago that this is, like you guys have said, it's a full reset now. DeMar's gone at the end of the year, whether they trade him or not. Caruso, they should get assets for. Vucevic, they should get assets for, especially when they're in the position where they are, where at least they have their draft picks now going forward. The Vucevic trade and those picks that they gave up, that's a thing of the past now. But outside of that, I mean, they don't have anything on the roster right now. Patrick Williams, like you alluded to earlier, Gabe, really been disappointing so far to start the year. Pretty much within the first week and a half of the season, got yanked out of the starting lineup for Torrey Craig, and that's not a good sign for a guy that is playing for a contract this year. Kobe White's continued to be fine, but at best, he's a fine to low-end starting point guard, which is okay, but like they don't really have any type of high-end piece right now unless Patrick Williams really pieces it together. So they need some form of assets, whether it's via players or picks, to really give their future a boost. So I think this is the right direction. The time was probably a year ago, so at least they're getting to it now, so they can hopefully get a little bit off of DeMar, a little bit from Vucevic, but definitely the right direction. And like you said, Reek, let's just hope that this is actually something they're going to go through with, and they don't just hold out and then keep Lavine, because DeMar and Vooch, I'm a little bit more certain in, especially DeMar because his contract's expiring, but Lavine could still be around for a while if they get hesitant.
Definitely. I just want to say real quick, because you guys both mentioned Patrick Williams. I feel like you guys are being nice. He's been bad. He's been really bad this season. Like, his splits are terrible. Just nothing about his game has looked good at all. But I will say this, for a team that, even though we all knew that they weren't going to be a good team, in their mind, they wanted to be a competitive team. And for somebody as young as Patrick Williams, who was just drafted in 2020, so he hasn't been in the league that long, and pretty much since after his rookie season, which he kind of wasn't on the court as much, he's been expected to be a contributor to a team that's been trying to be a playoff team. And we've seen in Golden State, like, teams that want to be competitive and develop their young guys at the same time. It doesn't really work that way, when you have these high-end lottery picks and you're trying to develop them while still be good. Like, it doesn't work well for those guys, for most young players, right? So for like him, like a Kobe White, this puts less pressure on Lonzo Ball to rush back. Like, Zoe, take your time, get as healthy as possible. Like, this could be good for the young guys. Now, that doesn't excuse Patrick Williams for being as bad as he has been, but with a lesser expectation of you have to be this type of piece on a team that, we're trying to be somewhat good. This can just let him kind of rock out if they do, move off of these guys, and they can see what they have, because he was taken number 4 overall for a reason. We've seen flashes, but maybe like with more opportunity and less high expectations for trying to be a good team, he can just, play basketball, play free, because we haven't been able to see him do that like a lot of other top picks from his class have been able to do.
Yeah, I think he was more of a guy drafted on potential to begin with. So if he ends up being a bit of a late bloomer, like that's good for them. I do think that it does make sense that they would wait this long to kick off this rebuild, because for as much as we might have wanted it and for as much as fans might have wanted it, one of you guys mentioned earlier too, like they just now have their picks back. So, I mean, they probably didn't want to end up looking like Brooklyn did a couple of years ago, where it's like, they traded all of their picks for like the Garnett, Paul Pierce thing, and then they end up not having them anymore, and they also don't have their picks, and it's like, now it's just we're bad, but we're bad for nothing. It's like, might as well go out there, put out the best product we can, try to win some games, and now that they actually could benefit from being bad, it does make a lot more sense now. Are the values of all the players as high as they might have been? I'm not sure. Probably not. But as far as the on-court product they're putting out and what makes sense just from an organizational perspective, like I can't fault them too much for that, because it's like, yeah, let's go tank. And then now whoever we traded it to, they get to benefit from that. I don't really know if that's what I want to do. And especially if I'm a front office, it's like, yeah, that's kind of career suicide at that point. So I can empathize with that, but I guess to take anything from it, it's like better late than never, because I think DeMar's gone. I mean, he is an aging player. It's like he's probably want to go where he has the best chance to win at this point. And then Vucevic, kind of same thing, getting up there in age. Like, I don't think these guys want to just waste away on middling teams. I mean, they're doing it now, but I would think that they would want to go do something different. So I think this is probably the last year of it. It's just how much can they get and how much can they really kickstart this rebuild, because starting from zero and starting with something is a lot better. It's better to start with something than to start with nothing. So I do hope they can get some sort of return and don't just let these guys walk.
Real quick, did either of you guys mention the Pacers earlier of potential trade destinations? They just popped in my mind. How would y'all think? How would y'all feel about that?
I feel like he's just more of what they already have. Like if they're making a trade, they need to make it for a defensive guy. I don't think adding more offense to that team makes sense at this point.
Yeah, especially, I mean, because their main trade piece right now is like Buddy, and Buddy is an off-ball offensive player, is so nice, and it's like Lavine's a better player than Buddy Hield, but as far as what fits best in the system they're running, that's being very successful so far. Like not really with that.
Okay, they just popped in my mind because I'm really trying to think of other than the obvious like Laker. I like the Magic, like how Dev mentioned. I think Orlando has assets that the Bulls would like.
Brooklyn could be an interesting fit too.
Brooklyn has assets that the Bulls would probably like.
That's a team who needs offense too.
Exactly.
The Lakers have a better asset pool than what they had last year, so I'm not trying to count them out. But I think other teams like Orlando has a combination of young players and draft picks that they could really like throw into the mix for the Chicago Bulls, maybe entice them. And like you said, Dev, like they struggle scoring the basketball, shooting on the perimeter. Zach could help accelerate that timeline just a little bit, but Zach's still young enough to where he could still grow with Paolo, who's been, a sensational player. Franz, who's been a sensational player. Wendell could still grow with those guys if those guys are all still on the team, of course, in that trade. But Orlando, that's an intriguing one. I think I like that more than anybody. Philly's kind of interesting, but I like what Philly has going on right now. So I don't know if they should really mess with that too much. The Lakers obviously is interesting, but I think Orlando, that could like be maybe the most underrated destination that would make sense for both parties involved.
Yeah, Philly didn't look so good already. Like you might be saying, okay, maybe we could do something there, but just when they can't seem to lose a game, like why disrupt that flow? We looking at the Western Conference, like there's not really a lot of Zach Lavine trade destinations that I'm looking at, and I'm like, yeah, I really see him fitting there. Like I don't think Denver needs to tamper with anything because they just are so good. Dallas, they have two guards. The Timberwolves, they really shouldn't be tampering with anything, and especially having a top player at that position.
Doesn't make sense.
The Rockets, that doesn't make sense. They're still trying to push Jalen Green as their franchise guy.
don't hate
OKC, they have
OKC.
guards.
I don't hate
I
OKC.
mean,
they're another team that needs shooting.
Yeah, they're
I get
interesting.
if you want to throw
Would you
get
trade
off
Giddey?
That's the
Yeah.
problem is you might have to give up Giddey. I don't know if you'd want to give up
I
Giddey.
think Giddey's the play because Giddey, he's such a dynamic player that
I like Giddey, but
I don't
Zach.
Yeah, that's the thing. I don't love Giddey there long term compared with they just have so many non-shooters, and I think they prefer Shea, and I think they prefer Jalen Williams. I think Shea and Giddey's a little bit more redundant. I think they'd rather keep Jalen Williams. I just don't know if Lavine's the guy that you get rid of Giddey for.
Yeah, if we saw more strides on defense from Shea, because we know we've seen some defensive potential from Shea.
He's been a lot better.
But yeah, if that kind of maintains itself and he can really be a defensive guard, so that way they don't just have two bad defensive guards out there in the starting lineup, it could definitely work. And I think Giddey probably would have to go because then you get to transition Shea to just full-time point guard anyways. Whereas right now it's is he a point guard? Is he a shooting guard? Because there's another point guard on the floor. So it's you don't kind of have that weird positional breakdown where it's Shea's the point guard and Zach's the shooting guard. So I could definitely see a fit there. And Giddey going to the Bulls, he could maybe even flourish because there's some times where he really fills up the stat sheet. And it's not to say he's been in a limited role because he's definitely had plenty of opportunity to shine, but there's a lot of guys there in OKC. And if he goes to Chicago, there ain't a lot of guys, and especially not a lot of guys who are good with the basketball in their hands. So he could probably raise his stock a lot there, and he might be a good investment for them to make. If there's not a great trade out there that's oh, this guy's a can't miss prospect, then saying we'll take some of your 17,000 picks, Oklahoma City, and then we'll take Josh Giddey, and then we get those picks. Josh Giddey raises his stock, and we flip him in the future when we start drafting some high-end players. If I'm the Bulls,
if Giddey was on the table, I don't think you get a better young player that's already proven he's good, but probably has even more room to get better than Josh Giddey.
I think the only other comparable name would be if the Knicks get involved and they trade quickly. I think and even then, I'm still probably a little bit higher on Giddey, but that's probably the best comparable.
Yeah, I wouldn't hate getting quickly back either because we've seen when he
has
on
Giddey to raise his stock. I feel like people might see quickly as a limited.
I think so too because big guard has steadily improved. Even though quickly good defender too, can shoot the ball really well. It's interesting, but Giddey's a high level. In games when Shea's out, Giddey really steps up and is damn near elite. He looks really good without Shea. He looks good with Shea, but when he has the ball in his hands that much more, he's that much dynamic of a point guard, man. He's a very underrated player. That's interesting. But I agree with what Dev said. Wouldn't hate it, but that could be maybe rushing just a little bit. We talk about OKC in these picks all the time, but I feel eventually a star better than Zach Lavine might become available, and you might not want to rush it right now because Zach Lavine's good, but there could be somebody better down the line. You just never know with the NBA. So, that's an interesting one. Giddey for Zach. I don't know if I would do that if I was OKC, but it's intriguing for sure.
It's interesting. The nice thing at OKC is long term when they're competitive, there's an argument they could have him be the fourth option, and he just doesn't have to do that much. And you're spacing, you're a good catch and shoot 3-point shot guy. You can create a little bit from the perimeter, especially considering perimeter shot creation and 3-point shot creation is far from the forte of this roster. But he wouldn't have to be the guy when you consider you have Chet, you have Shea, you have Jalen Williams. They still have enough options there. And not to mention the fact, even if you do give up Giddey, Casey Wallace is still there. They're going to have plenty of guard play, and that just eases out that point guard rotation a little bit more.
That's interesting. Them, Orlando. I wonder what Orlando's. I feel it might be a Markelle center trade. I could just see it being around that.
Markel's the name that makes the most sense from Orlando's perspective. I just don't know how much Chicago would want him considering he's on an expiring. I would think they'd probably push more for Black or Suggs, I would imagine.
Black would be intriguing, but then again, Chicago has shown they just can't develop talent. Like,
Yeah.
is it gonna change? Like, because Anthony Black, that's even though he's been productive when he's played, that's still like a project type of point guard because he has a lot of like raw intangibles, but it's gonna take a little bit of time for him to really come into his own. So, I don't know if I love that. I think I would prefer Giddey because he's already kind of proven, and I don't think Chicago could hinder that type of potential from him.
I agree. Yeah, I think Giddey would be really fun to have, just fully have all the keys to an offense because, like we've said, he's already shown those flashes in OKC. But if he can just be the guy and the engine to an offense, it could be really fun to see. Now, what are those pieces around him? Who knows? And that might hinder the numbers, but the eye test and just watching him play would be very fun. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, be like him, Pat Will, Kobe White. Who else? They don't even really like Dalen Terry hasn't really got opportunity, but he's young. Yeah,
I don't even know who else would be there because I was going to say Torrey Craig, but they might trade him too.
They should.
Bulls, yeah. We might see like a half season of like Giddey and DeRozan.
Two non-3-point shooters, but they get to it somehow. That'd be interesting.
It'll be nasty. It'll be nasty. I'll probably love it, but it'll be nasty.
Giddey with his own team, I think I would watch a decent. I'm not watching Bulls games right now, but if they got Giddey, I would tune into like maybe like the first like 10 or so games just to see how he's playing.
Yeah, the Bulls are one of those teams where they're pretty much the same team as last year, and they're not very good. So I'm not watching them because they're fun, and I'm not watching them because there's something new to look at.
You watch them if they're playing the Raptors. That's the only time y'all are.
God, I don't even want to watch that, bro. That's actually the most frustrating basketball watching experience I've had this season.
It's like you got to do it though. Like it's mandatory. But yeah, the Bulls ain't worth watching. There's a short list of teams that just aren't worth watching, but the Bulls are probably like the number one, to be honest.
Probably, like you guys said, they're not new, they're not good, they're not young. They tick none of the boxes, unfortunately. But a lot of interesting places for Lavine to go, and that in of itself, with him being potentially moved, will help the Bulls' watchability throughout the rest of the season. So hopefully that does happen in due time. It might not be till we get through that mid-December point and we get a few more guys who can be traded, but that'll be something to monitor over the next few weeks and months. But let's jump over to the Western Conference and talk about the Minnesota Timberwolves, a team that was very much hoping for this type of season last year when they traded for Rudy. Of course, Rudy didn't play as well. Cat was injured. They look like they're now putting the pieces together, at least so far this season. Gobert's looking like a depoy again. Ant is looking like he's taking that borderline MVP type jump. And they're a top 3 seed in the West because of it. I'll get your thoughts first, Reek. What have you liked from this Minnesota team so far? And do you think this is something they continue, or do they start to slide back a little bit?
Man, we were just 1 year early. Like we saw the vision, Dad. We saw the vision, but I love what I'm seeing from them, man. They've been a fun team to watch. The defense has been elite. Rudy looks like he's back to his form. And I think it can continue because the defense is that good. And, defense wins a lot of games in this league on nights where your offense isn't good. So, with Rudy being back to that level and then pieces around him buying in on that side of the floor, like we mentioned last week, like, Cat's offense has been kind of bad this season. Like defensively, he looks a lot more engaged. He's playing a lot better on that end of the floor. I think we've seen Ant like in the playoffs and games that really matter to lock in. But this man was locked in on like game 5 of the regular season. That's what you like to see. Like these games that may not seem like they matter, but he's engaged on that end of the floor. Obviously, McDaniels, Nikhil has been a very good piece for them, in that lineup. Mike Conley taking care of the basketball. It's something that can definitely continue. And I think they should be looked at as a team that can be dangerous, like once we get to the later stages in the season, the early stages of the playoffs, because we've seen them in like against Denver last year in the playoffs when they got healthy. Even though it was a 5-game series, they gave Denver a very competitive 5-game series. And with that, another year of experience in the playoffs under their belt, now we get to see a full season of these guys together, hopefully staying healthy. Can definitely continue. And like, it's like they got a lot of young guys like Ant, Jaden McDaniels, Nikhil. These guys are steadily improving too. So, the sky's really the limit for them, and they could really make some real noise in a Western Conference that's kind of hard to predict right now outside of Denver. Dallas look good, obviously, but Denver's like the top dog, and then it's like Dallas has looked good, Minnesota's look really good. Outside of that, like everybody's kind of been like up and down, but Minnesota, that defense is definitely going to travel. It's going to win them a lot of games.
Yeah, no, coming into this season, like when we were doing a lot of our predictions, I was like, last season really seemed to be worst case scenario for this Minnesota team. Like the way Gobert looked, obviously Cat missing time. There was just so many things going wrong, like chemistry issues. There was the whole thing with Rudy and Kyle Anderson. It's like this looks like a mess. And I don't even want to call this season like best case scenario because I don't think it is. Like, the biggest point would be something you already mentioned in that Cat offensive struggle. So not even best case scenario, but just almost just what we, like you said, kind of what we expected year one, or at least what you guys expected from them last year. And it looks good. Like it's so impressive how Anthony Edwards, for as good as he was last year, just makes another jump. Like as good as he was last year, making another 4-point per game jump this season on relatively the same efficiency. That's impressive stuff. He just continues to go from like a rising star to like a true cemented superstar level. Like probably will be in some top 10 talks by the end of this season. Not to mention the way that defense comes together with Anthony Edwards himself playing well in the defensive end, Jaden McDaniels playing well in the defensive end, Cat playing his best defense, Rudy Gobert just finally, like you said, getting back to form. Nikhil can defend. Some other guys off the bench, like they have all of these defensive pieces from top to bottom, and it's like, yeah, I think this defense is legit. And if the main question is, can they keep being this good all season? Now, will they be the 3 seed? I don't know about that, but like, will they be easily above the play-in? I think they will, because something like defense, like I don't think this is going to go away overnight. Like, will there be some games where teams get super hot and put up a bunch of points on them? Yeah, I'm sure, because it's basketball and that happens. But overall, over the course of the next 70 games they have left, yeah, I think this defense is going to look really legit. They're going to have a lot of nights where teams just can't make nothing, can't do anything against them. And Anthony Edwards and them are going to do just enough on offense to really get some wins out of here. And if Cat's offense gets back to what it can be, damn near the second, third best offensive big in the league, they're going to look scary. They're going to look real scary. And even if they only finish like as a 5 seed, only like 3 seeds higher than they were last year, this team is miles better. Miles better.
Yeah, they've looked significantly better, and barring any significant injuries or any significant changes that are unforeseen, they look like a top 4 seed in the West to me. And that defense is the biggest bit of it. That defense has just been that good. I mean, we haven't seen a defensive rating this good since the Bucks in the 1920 season, I believe, and the Timberwolves are even a little bit better than that. So they're in a great spot defensively. Their personnel is great. I mean, Gobert's having a great year. Cat's been better. McDaniels, we know what he does. Ant still had lapses, but he's been a little bit more consistent on that end, which has been nice to see. We've talked about Nikhil. Naz Reid still does his thing, and he's been shooting like crazy from threes at about 54% right now from 3, which has been a big help to them. Nikhil's been shooting really well. They've just really had all the pieces come together. Now, I don't know if some of that 3-point shooting will continue from some of those role players. We've mentioned the Cat struggles. That's been smoothed out for the most part since the first 3-4 games of the season. He had the one rough night against the Celtics, but other than that, he's been much improved. He's looked much more comfortable from 3. Getting downhill, he's looked a lot better. He's got his cuts going again. His driving game has looked a lot better. So that's starting to figure itself out. And if that's the case, if they're healthy, there's no reason why they can't continue to be this good. How this system works in the playoffs, that's still the biggest question. But for the time being in the regular season, I really like what they got going. The 3 big system with Naz Reid, Gobert, and Cat, as unorthodox as it might be, it's really been working. The defense, even with Cat and Gobert, has been good. The defense with Gobert and Naz Reid is great. They have offense galore with Towns and Naz Reid on the court. Anytime they have that, they can go 5 out. They have a ton of spacing. And Ant just continues to do his thing, like we've said. Very efficient, drawing free throws at a higher rate. playmaking has improved. He's averaging over an assist more a game this year than he was last year. Still settling for a few more tough threes than I would like, but we're getting pretty nitpicky at this point. I mean, this is, like you say, Gabe, a guy who's going to be entering borderline top 10 conversations very quickly, if not already, and very deservedly so. So I like what I'm seeing from the Timberwolves. Nothing about what I'm seeing from them so far seems like something they can't continue to produce throughout the rest of the regular season. And given the fact that Cat and Gobert are still only touching like 35, 40 games together, they're probably only going to get more comfortable, get better. Some of this high-low action that we're seeing, which I really like and I think has a lot of promise, is probably going to get cleaned up a lot more because there's some opportunities there. And there's still just a lot of plays there where Cat's missing a pass, there's a bit of miscommunication, or Gobert doesn't quite have the timing right. That's only going to continue to get better. So there's a lot of things like that I think give them another 40, 50 games into this season. They're only going to look better, specifically between Gobert and Cat. So I really like what I'm seeing here, and I think they should continue to be, if not as good as they've been so far this year, then pretty darn close, and they should comfortably be in the postseason.
Hey, real quick, I gotta kind of double up on something you said. Nas Reed has been cooking.
Thanks.
I see.
I was about to say the same thing.
Every time he has a good game, bro. Wolves Twitter, Wolves Brazil, the whole, bro. I thought like that like three. Like the three big thing, I thought one of them was gonna end up getting a little phased out. Like a lot of people thought Cat would be in the trade block, or Nas Reed might up and leave to get like a bigger role somewhere. They found a way to make it work, and Nas Reed has been very effective, even as the third big on the depth chart. So shout out to him for maintaining to be like even better than he was last year with objectively less opportunities because Cat is back in the rotation full time.
It works because they're all like different types of players. Like Rudy does what he does as the defensive anchor. Cat is, when he's on, he's that offensive engine type of guy. And Nas Reed, he's just a bucket. Like he just comes on, like he's kind of like just the ultimate bench guy. He's just in a big man form, and he does all those things. So that's why it works out and has been working so far. And that's a good point, Dev, how you mentioned like Cat, Rudy, like 40 games tops is what they played together, right? And also, you got to throw in Mike Conley coming in at the deadline last year. That's really what changed their season around, is when they got Mike Conley. Like, he just made them a lot more steady on the offensive side of the floor. So, big shout out to Mike Conley because he's been taking care of the basketball like crazy so far this season. I don't think he still has that one turnover on his record, but for a minute, it was just one turnover to like 20-something assists. So, it's great that they made that move last trade deadline because even though, like, we mentioned at the time, D'Lo might be a more talented basketball player, but Mike Conley's the kind of vet that you need, especially next to an Ant who's a young rising star, and with a team that just needed some steady point guard play, some steady leadership, and that's exactly what Mike Conley provides.
He had that Gobert chemistry too, and from the Utah days, like him coming in, and now Gobert looks way better this season. I'm not gonna say it's causation, but it might be a little correlated,
And Mike Conley been like just so underrated how he impacts winning. Like everywhere he's gone, those teams have won everywhere. May not lead to a championships, but he's definitely a floor raiser, man. Like he goes to Utah, they get the 1 seed. Memphis for years, he was like their first or second best player for a long time. They were always winning a lot of games. And now Minnesota, like as soon as he gets there, their season kind of gets salvaged last season. They make the playoffs. And, so far this season, they're looking like one of the top teams out west.
He was on a bad team like once. And it was like that 1 year Memphis was really bad and they got Ja Morant. It's like the only time.
Yeah, he was averaging like 22 a game that season or something random like that.
That's probably his best individual years, like just pure stats-wise.
Correct me. I think Tyrik Evans was on that team.
That sounds right.
Yeah,
he's either there that year or the year before, and he averaged like 19 a game or something crazy like that.
Was that the same year he got banned from the league, or was that after that?
No, he went to Indiana, and then he got banned.
Yeah, he went to Indiana.
Yeah. Dark times for Memphis fans, and it's kind of back there now this season. But, yeah, Minnesota, though, they've been doing their thing.
Definitely a great start from Minnesota. And we'll talk about another great start out west, and that is the Houston Rockets, a team that we were very skeptical of their offseason, and they have now won 6 games in a row after an 0-3 start. And I mean, I was on here talking about them after game 1 because the Orlando Magic smacked them, and it was like, yeah, okay, this looks like it might be exactly what we expected. And given a road or home heavy schedule over the last couple of weeks, but they've more than shown that they are a much, much better team. Whether it's Ime Udoka, whether it's the additions, more than likely a combination of a bunch of things, but they've looked a much better team. I'll get your thoughts first, Reek. What have you thought of this Rockets team so far? And similar to the Timberwolves, is this something that you think they can keep up?
It's early. It's 9 games into their season, but I can say I didn't expect them to look this good at really any point in the season. Like, that's how I felt about the team. Look, you kind of got to, admit, when you might have been a little bit wrong. Still a lot of basketball left, but they've looked really good. Defensively is the main thing. We were talking before the pod, Dev, like, you can't really single any one person out. It's just like collectively, the defense has been really good. Freddie's been clutch down the stretch. Guys like Dillon Brooks has been mad efficient. Ime, it's Ime for me. That's the guy I got to give credit, man, because he really changed Boston's culture. And I said, like going into this job, like, he's gonna have his work cut out for him. And he's stepping up to the plate, man. He's accepting the challenge, and he's got these boys playing some damn good basketball. Like, I definitely didn't expect him to be 6-3. I didn't know if this defense was gonna look this good. Defense has been damn near elite. Ime's got them playing some great basketball. And like we mentioned about the Timberwolves, man, defense is something that you can't really fake it. Like, even if it's early on in the season, like, you can kind of tell. It's rare that you see a team like just start out hot on the defensive side of the floor and then they just get back to being bad. Like, it's rare that you see that. And they got the pieces on their team to be like a solid, at least top half of the league defense. Now, will that continue to them being above 500 as the season goes on? I don't know. Not sure about that, but that's definitely something that you can build on. And if their defense continues to be top 10-ish, the offense doesn't have to be like all worldly for them to continue to be competitive and win games, which really, if they flirt with the play-in, like by the end of the season, that's a lot better than what I would have had them. I mean, I had them like second to last in the West. So, they've been impressive, man. But if I have to give one guy the credit, it's definitely Ime Udoka, because after all the drama in Boston, Wayne got him a new job, and he's accepted that challenge of trying to change his culture. And through 9 games, this is the best basketball that the Houston Rockets have played since James Harden left. Like, it's been a while since they played this good. I know they had that long winning streak, but we knew that was fake. But this seems like something that they can build on, and I like to see it for them.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with Houston now is they look a lot more like an actual team than just a bunch of guys out there playing AAU ball like they may have looked like for long stretches last season. You just look at what they got now, and it's like, Fred VanVleet, they call him Steady Freddy for a reason. Not that he's been like otherworldly, but he just brings that veteran point guard dynamic to them. It's allowed Jalen Green to just focus on scoring the basketball, getting some buckets, and honestly, like, we'll get there when we get there, but he's one of my player shout-outs for the week because our boy Sengun, I feel like he's been getting a lot of credit, but there's been a lot of games where I've liked a lot of what I've seen from Jalen Green too. And as somebody who is pretty critical of him in the past, like, for him to be taking those steps and for him to look a lot better when put in an actual system, that's really good to see. And then further highlighting Sengun, like, not to say he's not, like, he should be getting his credit. He's played really well for them as well. May even be their best player. And then Dillon Brooks, he won that divorce. That divorce with the Grizzlies, like, the Grizzlies look terrible. And Dillon Brooks on the Rockets, like, the biggest issue with him was him taking these ill-advised shots, putting a giant target on their back, and just all these different negative aspects, like being just a horrible offensive player. And this season, like, he's bought into a role. That efficiency, we're starting to see it drop a little bit from that 60-60 stuff he was doing at the beginning of the season, which was expected, but still, either way, like, he's bought into a role and he's being efficient in that role, and he's still bringing the defense night in and night out. And with that, they still have all this other talent just waiting in the wings. Like Cam Whitmore, correct me if I'm wrong, I think he just got sent down to the G League, so he'll actually get to develop more, and maybe he'll come back by like next season or something and end up being a bigger part of their rotation. Amin Thompson, he's only played like 4 games, but we know what he can do once he gets more of a chance to continue to develop a little bit. And so they had even more guys than who's been showing out so far. And like you said, Reek, really Ime ties it all up. And I almost want to ask you guys, like, are you guys surprised that he was able to course correct them so quickly? Because even for as talented as Boston was last year, like, you got to think Boston, or not last year, but the year before when he first got there, when Ime got to Boston, like, it took half a season before they were good. Like, the first half of that year, they were not good. So, like, for them to straight out the gate exceed expectations so quickly, like, I mean, obviously we didn't expect him to be that good, but like, I definitely didn't think we'd see his impact this immediately, especially when we said like, it's probably going to be a lot in like his scheming and their defense and everything, like you mentioned, looking so much better. I didn't expect it to be this quick.
Yeah, this quick is definitely unexpected. Credit to Ime. I don't want to take away from him in this statement, but I think to have a collective buy-in this quickly, there has to be a significant amount of respect from the culture setting that's also likely coming from Freddie and from Dylan Brooks and likely Jeff Green, because this collective of a buy-in on the defensive end and from a team cohesion standpoint on the offensive end, from where they were last year to where they are now, 9 games in, it's just complete night and day. Like, it's such a rapid transition and such a drastic transition that credit to Ime. He's obviously done a great job, but this is also what has to be Fred VanVleet, a Dylan Brooks, a Jeff Green being, okay, this is the team we want to be. This is the identity we're going to set. And they're setting that tone night in, night out. They were evidently doing it during the preseason because they came out of the gates doing it minus the first couple of games. And Freddie's been doing it defensively. Dylan Brooks has been doing it defensively. Jeff Green's been in here getting closing minutes and playing very well. Hey, this is a great credit to Ime Udoka, but all these veterans that we were a little bit concerned about during the offseason, they've come in and done what they needed to do for them to be successful, because this type of a culture reset this quickly, I don't know if it's ever been done before. So credit to the vets and to Ime, all of the coaching staff. It's a very, very impressive reset that they've had over the last few months.
Yeah, I was pretty much the same thing. Like, I am surprised because even though they brought in all those vets, like you mentioned, Dev, and how Gabe you compared it to like the Celtics, I think part of it, like Ime has that experience. It took him half a season to kind of, I guess, reset the culture in Boston to get them playing well. So he has that experience, which is good. He's got the vets coming in also, but this Rockets culture was so shot the last couple of years, man. Like, just everything after Morey left and, the James Harden situation, like, it's been shot since then. Like you said, Gabe, and I like to call the Rockets this. I was calling them it last year. Ever since we started the podcast, man, AAU basketball, that's how they were playing. Jalen Green might average 23 points, but he's taking some of the worst shots in the league. Like, his shot diet was just terrible. And this is the first time that these young guys have real structure. So it's a combination of a lot of things that's kind of resetting this culture. Didn't expect it to look this solid this quickly, but it's good to see, man, because that was like the worst place in basketball, in my opinion, just as far as like on-court culture type stuff. There were teams that were in like worse directional positions, but as far as their basketball play and just their culture overall, it was like the worst it's been. I saw Garrett in the chat saying like they also filtered out a lot of the guys that were negatives, whether on or off the court, which is also a good thing. So it's a combination of things, but to answer your question, yes, I'm very surprised that it seemed like it's a rapid reset of the culture and it's working so far.
I want to highlight one more thing too, just about like talking about this like team aspect and the structure of it all. We're highlighting their defense, which according to Basketball Reference is like 6th best in the league right now, which 6th best defense from where they were last year is crazy. But also they're averaging the 3rd least turnovers in the league right now. And it's like, for a team who offensively just look like a bunch of guys out there, a lot of it's probably Freddie, and I'll highlight that to the Freddie effect. But like going from AAU ball to the third least turnovers, playing that clean of a game, that's some real stuff right there. Like that's something you can for real look at and be like, okay, night and day difference.
100%.
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, the way we were talking about them, like this all season, especially how Dev was just irate about the moves they made, like super impressive. Even if it doesn't keep up, man, this is super impressive. Just like, because even if they do fall off and they don't even like make the play-in or whatever, like this is still something that a foundation is being built, and down the line, Jalen Green's going to keep getting better. You hold Jabari Smith, Şengün, like those guys, Thompson.
Mm-hmm.
Those guys are going to continue to improve. You got your vets still there, like something that you can build on, which is just something that they've been trying to build something without a foundation for the last few years, and now they kind of are finally settling in on this type of organization, type of basketball team that we want to be moving forward.
Yeah, if they can get to the end of the season, have like 34 wins, and like we see some more development out of Amin and out of Jabari, like that's such a success of a season. Because I think that the Şengün production and the Jalen Green production, I think that'll sustain itself. But if those other two guys get good, I don't want to say get good because they're already good players. But like if they continue developing, and even if they have a couple less wins than 500, perfectly fine season for them.
Definitely a lot of good signs from them early on. Like you say, Garrett, the efficiency from their playmaking has been ridiculous. I mean, Şengün and Freddie have come in and just, I mean, Şengün's been doing it, but at least now there's a bit of reinforcement from coaching staff and from Freddie that they're really setting this identity of ball movement and much better playmaking and much better spacing that allows them to have more success doing that. So absolutely brilliant stuff they've been doing on both ends of the floor, and hopefully they can keep on doing so. We're going to talk about the team that has been the biggest surprise at the top of the conference out east, and that is the team that only traded away James Harden not too long ago. Picked up a loss tonight, but before that, we're 8-1 before losing to the Pacers. Joel Embiid looks like an MVP still, coming off that MVP last year. Tyrese Maxey, ridiculous stuff, just dropped a 50-piece the other night. Tobias Harris is playing arguably some of the best basketball of his career. Our best wishes go out to Kelly Oubre in his recovery and his freak incident the other night. But we'll get your thoughts first, Gabe. What have you been seeing from this Philly team so far this year? And what has been a team that we thought was still going to be good, but I don't think many people thought they were going to be this good with James Harden out the door?
Tyrese Maxey's a dog. I knew he had a high ceiling, but I didn't know that he could get there this quickly. When I was thinking about the future dynamic of this team, I was like, well, yeah, like Maxey and Embiid could be a really good duo, but I just didn't know if the timelines would match up. Like a lot of my concerns before the season was like, well, like Maxey's still a bit young, might need a bit of time to really get to that like star status, reach his full potential, and we don't know how long Embiid has before he might start to fall off a little bit. And it's like, no, like Maxey's here now. The stuff he's been doing, dude, I hate that the Raptors already had to play them twice, because every time I watch them play our team, I'm like, bro, this Maxey dude he just can't be stopped. Like he gets whatever he wants. He can get a bucket at any level of the court. He does what we predicted him to do and added in another new element to his game. From year 1 to year 2 was the shooting, and from year 2 to year 3, it's a lot more playmaking. And all of a sudden, they don't even need James Harden. And Embiid, I mean, I don't know why. Like, I feel like a lot of people expected a bit of a fall off, but it hasn't really been there. Like, he's still putting up that production that he did as the MVP last year. He's still been that top 5 caliber guy, and just running behind that engine, that offense is going to go. Like, they're going to have enough with their supporting pieces from, like, I think just tonight, Melton had a big game for them, and we know what he can do consistently off the bench. Oubre was doing well, and the sooner he gets back, that'll be just more of a burst for them. Like you mentioned, Tobias playing well, and so, like, they have guys around these main two, but that engine is going to get you going. And then you bring in that aspect of Nick Nurse on defense. I had some concerns about them bringing in Nick Nurse, but it wasn't about defense. It was about the offense. And if the offense is going to be just fine, then Nick Nurse is filling in what you need him to do, and that's making your defense good. If he can continue to do that, like this team's going to continue to be amazing, and that's what they've been so far. Like I think they just took an L to the Pacers because, that boy Tyrese gave him that work, and I'm not talking about Maxey this time, but
Maxey had a good game.
He always has a good game. He's elite, but the way Philly's been playing, my only question is just going to be about the postseason, because if the offense is just give it to Maxey, let him go to work, give it to Embiid, and sometimes Tobias will step up. We've seen them falter before in playoff scenarios, but I have a bit more confidence because we know that James Harden aspect. If you get to the postseason, then you fall off, and it's like we might have to have some discussions about James Harden. I think we got that planned for a little bit later in the pod, so I'll save that for now. But James Harden might be entering his 2018 Melo arc. That's all I'm going to say on that.
I'm going to give them another postseason chance because new head coach Nick Nurse has at least been a good playoff coach. I'm going to give them one more chance. Yeah, y'all might feel differently because you're Raptors fans, but I feel like Nick Nurse has been a very solid playoff coach. Makes adjustments. Doc Rivers doesn't make adjustments. Maybe he can get the most out of Embiid once we get to that time. Embiid won't be floating around the three-point line in the postseason like he was in the Brooklyn series. Maybe we'll see that, or maybe not. Maybe it'll be the same old Sixers. But Gabe mentioned most of the things. I got to talk about Tobias Harris, man, because I checked his numbers randomly the other day, and I'm like, damn, he's averaging 20 points a game, shooting the lights out from all over the floor, and nobody's talking about it because it's Tobias Harris, and he's always so steady between 18 and 20 points per game. Shout out to Tobias, man, because he's been playing damn good basketball. Like, Maxey's getting a lot of the praise because he's taking that massive lead, which he deserves all the praise. But, man, Tobias, no matter if James Harden is there, no matter if James Harden is gone, no matter who's on the court, Tobias is going to do what he does, man. And I respect a consistent basketball player. People are just mad because he makes a lot of money and he's not an all-star, but he's still a very, very solid, third option if you ask him to be that. And there's nights where he can step up and be like a number two guy if you really need him to. So shout out to Tobias. He's one of the reasons why Philly's playing such good basketball. But Embiid, I mentioned it last week, he's just taking steps and steps every single season. Somehow continues to get better in the regular season. Maxey, his development. I mean, we saw on ball before Harden got there. He was already taking strides. But then he had pretty much a year and a half when he's an off-ball guy. Now he gets to be back in that role, and he's even exploded even more. That combination with Nick Nurse coming in and the Harden trade, you gave up PJ Tucker, but he hasn't looked good with the Clippers. Rocco seems to be playing okay basketball. Nick Batum's been okay. They just need solid role players around Maxey, Embiid, and I guess with what Tobias does, him too. And they got that. They got that core. That's why I'm I don't know if a Zach Lavine trade for them should be in the cards. Plus, I like how Melton is a defensive guy in the backcourt next to Maxey because Maxey's not the strongest of defenders. So I wouldn't rush for them to do that Lavine trade if it was on the table. So I like what Philly got going, even though they lost tonight, but they've looked great, even in games where they were playing Detroit the other night, and Detroit was up 15 points near halftime. And Philly just slowly started climbing back into that game, and next thing you know, Philly's up by double digits. They're just that solid of a team. Nick Nurse has elevated these guys in the regular season. Like Gabe said, we'll have to see how the playoff goes. But maybe they exercised some of those demons by getting rid of James Harden. That could be a thing. So we'll see.
We're going to have discussions. We're going to have some discussions.
Definitely going to be an interesting thing to look at. I like your point about Lavine. I've maintained the stance that Philly, for them, it makes a little bit more sense for what's available, at least for the time being, to make that splash in free agency than it does in season. If they're going to make a type of trade, maybe an Alex Caruso is the guy they look at. But I don't think a Zach Lavine caliber guy is the guy they look at. And you talking about Tobias Harris is the perfect representation of that. He's been brilliant this year, and he's just finally getting to be a third option again. Not that he's bad as a fourth option, but he can be a third option. He's a solid defender, but now he's actually getting to to do more than just I'm sitting in the corner and shooting threes. He's taking advantage of mismatches. He's getting some post ups. He's getting downhill and really taking advantage of smaller wings that are defending him. He just looks like he's a much more complete player than he's been the last couple of years, simply because he's getting that opportunity again. And because of that and that efficiency he's had this year, it's arguably the best year of his career, assuming Philly continue to play as well as they have. So love what I'm seeing from that. I don't think Lavine is necessary here, as well as Maxi's been shooting and playmaking, as well as Embiid's continued to play. His playmaking and passing out of double teams just continues to look better year on year, and this year's no different. I love what they have from their core guys. The biggest thing will then be, what do they get from their bench? We talked about Anthony Melton. He had a really good night tonight. Hopefully that continues, because the shot has been a bit of a rough patch for him so far to start the year, but he's got enough of a proven track record at this point that I'm not too worried about his shot. Hopefully Kelly Oubre is back for them at some point and he can continue to produce, but what is their bench outside of that? Like we talked about Batum, we talked about Covington. Does Daniel House start to produce? Does Springer start to produce? They need a guy or two there. That it just hasn't really happened yet. They got a few pieces. Someone will probably step up. Maybe Batum gets the shot back a little bit more. Maybe Covington solidifies himself. Maybe Paul Reed continues to be a good enough backup big for them. But they just need a guy or two there outside of a Melton, outside of a Kelly Oubre when he's back in a few months' time. They need a guy or two to step up. But the Maxey, Embiid, Tobias Harris trio is great. The Nick Nurse addition so far has been great. And like you were talking about earlier, Reek, proven playoff head coach. And at the very worst, he can't be worse than Doc Rivers in the postseason. He just can't be. There's no way they go into a postseason with Nick Nurse and it's any worse than what they had with Doc. Will it be much better? We'll see. But it can't be any worse. There's just no way.
That is impossible. It's impossible to be worse than what Doc Rivers was in Philadelphia in the postseason. Like it's just not going to happen. Like it's already an upgrade. You can't get worse. But yeah, Tobias, man, like really, like when I looked at his numbers, I'm like, is this real? Like, is this a typo? Because I think he was shooting like 60% from the field or something. Something insane, bro.
56.5 right now.
Yeah, so yeah, like you said, Milton, it's been a struggle, big game tonight. Hopefully that continues for him because he had a stretch last season where he started off like early on in like November. He was shooting the ball really well. So hopefully he can get, if he gets back to form, we'll see what like you said, who comes off that bench and really performs. I'm gonna continue to push the Jaden Springer agenda. I think there's something there. He just needs that opportunity to consistently play, produce something. But they got time. They got, some assets if they want to. Even if it's not that splash move, maybe they go and get somebody that can come off the bench. Maybe they go get a Caruso or somebody. Like they got the assets to do so now. So, they're a dangerous team in the Eastern Conference. Like everybody, us included, Boston, Milwaukee, Philly's still there on that level, man. Still right there.
Yeah, that Nick Nurse recipe to success, I think, when it comes to the postseason, like when we saw him win a championship, a lot of what he was doing was on that defensive side of the ball. I think the most famous one is them literally playing a box and one on Steph Curry, and I think it was like game 2 or game 3. Like that's the type of stuff he'll do. But then on the offensive end, like that was really powered by an offensive hub in Kawhi Leonard with the playmaking of Lowry and just the amount of talent they had there. And if that becomes this time, just the offensive hub that is going to be Joel Embiid and all the opportunities he's going to create for other guys just by being himself and attracting so much attention down low, mixed with the abilities of Tyrese Maxey on the perimeter. I mean, it fits into what's worked for Nick Nurse before. So it's like I see no reason beyond Philadelphia in name why it should be a concern. It's just what we've seen from Philadelphia of like, oh, Embiid's banged up and Tobias wants to just chill on his 16 points per game and this and that and different agendas and narratives. But just like on paper, there's not really a lot of reasons to doubt them and what they have right now.
Definitely not. They've had a great start to the year, and with some other top contenders out east struggling, like we talked about last week with the Bucks, there's definitely some room for Philly to really cement themselves throughout the regular season. Maybe they get some extra home court advantage, and maybe that's the little push that they need to get themselves through an extra round of the postseason. But let's move back out west to a team that has certainly not struggled for postseason success over the last decade, and that is the Golden State Warriors. Unfortunately, a team that has really struggled with any sort of production outside of Curry so far this year. Clay has really stunk it up to start the year. Wiggins' his offense has just seemingly disappeared. Some of the bench pieces have been okay. Chris Paul has looked good, minus the fact he also can't hit a three-point shot. But the biggest concern now is where that secondary production comes. Steph's going to miss a bit of time. It doesn't look like it's going to be a long-term injury, so they should be able to tread water for the time being. But I'll get your thoughts first, Gabe. Are you worried about the Warriors, or do you believe enough in Clay and Draymond and Wiggins that these guys are going to bounce back enough that they should be fine?
So I think it's an interesting situation because it's more of a conversation about like a second, third option than I think it is about like depth. Because they have their number one. Curry's been great. He's still averaging a very efficient 30 points per game. And very Steph-like things to do. Nothing new that we haven't seen before. And then, like, from the depth end, like, Chris Paul, even if the jump shot doesn't come around, like, his playmaking alone with those bench guys is valuable enough. Kuminga's looked the best he ever has. He's up to, like, 12 points per game on the season, which is definitely a win for their bench. I think Dario looks just fine. Gary Payton, he's going to come in and play defense, do what he does. Moody, he's going to come in, and he's looked like decent this season as well. So it's like these depth guys, they look fine. It really is going to come down to Clay, Wiggins, Draymond, and they haven't looked so hot this year. And I'm quite surprised because especially, correct me if I'm wrong, but is Clay not playing for a contract?
I believe so.
So, like, in a contract year where he said he wanted a lot of money, if he doesn't start turning it up, man, I don't know. Like, not as dynamic as he used to be, only at about 34, 35% from three this season. Like, it's not the production you'd like from a second option on a team that wants to contend. And Wiggs at only 10 points per game. That's shocking. And a lot of his impact is going to be on the defensive side of the ball as their like primary wing defender. So I think if he's struggling on offense, it's like at least he's still providing you something quality on the court. And same thing with Draymond, like he does a lot of different things. So like, if he has a bad defensive night, like there's playmaking ability that's still there. If he's kind of being sloppy with the passes and he gets a couple turnovers, the defense might still be there. And it's like he does a lot of different things. But Clay specifically, if he's not making shots, I don't really know what he's providing you. And that can be a bit scary. Now, do I know if he turns it around? It's hard to say. And that's the thing with guys who mainly rely on shooting is like, is it a slump or is it pure regression? And that's been a lot of the question with Klay Thompson when he struggles over the past couple years. So the best thing I can tell you is I hope he turns it around, and I'd rather the slump happen now than later because even Steph's prone to a slump. Like the year they won the championship, he went through like a 3-month stretch where he couldn't shoot at all. So maybe Klay turns it back on later, and it's like, remember when Klay was asked to start the season and then it ends up being fine? Sure, but one of these guys is going to have to start playing some offense because guy like 6 through 10 is cool and guy 1 is cool. And I'll throw Big Loon in there too as being cool because he's just going to play his role.
He does what he does.
But like guy 2 through 4, yeah, we need to see some more.
They're an interesting team, man. They looked good that first like week and a half. But if last season wasn't what it was for them, like the road struggles and stuff, we're like, they'll probably get better at some point. It never really happened in the regular season. And yeah, they won some games in the playoffs on the road, but when they needed to in the Lakers series, they couldn't win in LA. So I don't know if I can just give them that benefit of the doubt. Like they're the Warriors, they'll figure it out. I don't know, man. Wiggs has looked terrible. Like his splits, he's averaging like 8 points per game over like the last week or so, 10 on the season. Can't hit a free throw. Can't hit a jump shot. Like he's just out there. just running around, doing nothing really. Clay, I think Clay will get better because he shot it really bad so far. And he started off last season kind of slow too, and he ended up being like a 40% shooter for the season. So I could see Clay getting better, but they're asking Steph to do a lot on that offensive side of the floor. And Steph's prone to miss time. Like you said, Dev, he's already about to miss maybe a few games. Knee sprain, who knows how long that will keep him out. But Steph's pretty much prone to miss some time, and they can't handle the non-Steph Curry minutes. So they're an interesting team. I remember last week I was saying, like, I feel like they're on that, like, contender level. I might backtrack that just a little bit just because there's so much uncertainty, and I can't keep giving them that benefit of they're the Warriors, they'll figure something out, because it didn't happen last season. If it happens one time, might be an accident, but any more times after that, it might just be who they are at this point.
You know, I saw a graphic, I think like yesterday or the day before, and it was like all 30 teams, and it was like a graph of like their starters point differential versus their bench point differential. And it was basically like which teams are better with their starters on the floor and with their bench on the floor. And the Warriors were one of the teams where like the starters were a net negative. Like they were losing games and the bench was a net positive. So it was really almost like I said, the depth guys, like they were getting the job done. When Kuminga and them were out there, they were putting up numbers, and they were like either coming back from a deficit, extending the lead, whatever what you need your bench to do. On the other hand, I think he is. But I'm gonna let it rock. If it lasts a minute,
we'll keep cooking.
But yeah, that's why I say like the issue is really guy like 2 to 4, because we talk about the non-Steph Curry minutes, but it's actually the Steph minutes that they're losing. And it's not because of Steph. It's because the other guys on the floor with them are not playing good.
Bro, the bench has, like, with Chris Paul running the show, like, the benches look damn good. Like you said, like, Kuminga's look better. Moody's knocking down. Like, the benches look fine. It's that starting five sucks right now. And it's like, the starting five they won a championship with.
We're talking about the non-Steph minutes, and it's like, I'm low-key worried about the Steph minutes because the guys playing with Steph don't want to show up.
It's like the starters are asking Steph to do way too much. Like, Clay got to be better.
It looks like Devin's back. He's returned.
Devin's back.
Am I?
Yes.
He was frozen for
Yeah, my monitors have been black for about the last 4 to 5 minutes. So if I am here, it is I am very unaware, but I will take it.
Could you hear us?
I could hear you guys the entire time, but I have no idea what's going on. But hey, if you guys can hear me, then all is good.
No, we can hear you. We can see you. It's good. Now we're just talking about those Golden State. I feel like the Steph minutes are actually worse than the non-Steph minutes at this point. Like because of the guys that are out there with Steph, and literally the stats show like the starting lineup, they got the positive point or the starting lineup has the negative point differential. The bench lineup has the positive points differential. So it's like, yeah, the starters got to step up, man. And this is not a team that's prone to making mid-season trades. And I don't think they'd make a mid-season trade because I don't think the Golden State Warriors are trading Klay Thompson mid-season. That's just, after this long, it ain't happening. But he's going to have to start making shots, or Wiggins is going to have to turn it up, or somebody.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation for them with their starters versus their bench. Now, a big part of why their bench unit has been so good is because Chris Paul has been such a stabilizing factor, and Curry's been playing less minutes because of it. He's had to do less because of it from a point guard standpoint. Obviously, from a scoring standpoint, he's had to carry the load, and he's done so. He's played at an MVP type level this year. He's been great. But Chris Paul has had a big help in that as well. They've never had another playmaker from the point guard spot as someone outside of Draymond that's been so impactful within this era of Golden State basketball. And that's been so valuable. And you guys touched on it. Kuminga's been good. Moody's looked solid. Gary Payton continues to do his thing. Like, their bench pieces have been very productive. I've loved the Dario Saric pick up. His fit here looks great. So when he can pass a bit, really good floor spacer. And even though he's not overly big, it is a little bit of size compared to the rest of this roster for the most part. So Sarge has been really nice to see. But like you guys said, Clay, Wiggins, most specifically, those guys just need to figure it out on the offensive end, especially Wiggins. He's just been terrible. I mean, Clay's been not great, but at least it's something. Wiggins is this guy's a former All-Star at this point, and call it an undeserving All-Star appearance as a starter or not, he's got to be held to a lot higher expectations than what he's been producing as of late. So I expect they'll figure it out to some extent. I mean, I've seen enough from Wiggins over the last few years that I can't imagine this continues for an entire season. How much it improves, we'll see. But I think there's better days ahead. And the biggest question most people had for them this year going into the season was, what does the bench look like? I said they were going to be okay, and the bench unit has been more than okay. They just need to figure out the few other guys now, and I'd imagine Clay and Wiggins, although they might take a step back, they should be good enough that I think they can at least be in the conversation.
I can't see Wiggins not getting to at least 16, 17. Because to me, Wiggins is going to be 18 to 20 in good defense on this team. And for him to be 10, I don't believe it. Just the law of averages tells me that's going up. Now, if Clay ends the season at what's he at now? 16. If Clay ends at 19 points per game on 37% from three, okay, we know Clay is regressing a bit. It's fine. But Wiggins, 10, yeah, we're gonna need more.
Is Clay regressing? Because he was 22 a game last year, shooting 40 something from three. His defense, we know that's taking.
Well, yeah. So yeah, he's regressed, but
I don't know.
It depends. He just, I feel like he's probably a bit more streaky than he used to be. He'll have stretches where he just can't shoot the ball. Then he'll have stretches where he really looks like the old Clay. I mean, yeah, last year, good offensive season. The main regression is in that defense and their championship run. He didn't look great by any stretch. So, yeah, he's there sometimes. Sometimes he isn't. I think the biggest thing with him for a while was just his shot selection. When he first came back in that first year or so, there were a lot of games where it was brutal to watch. But I don't see that being an issue as much now. So at least either he's making them or he's just settled into taking less terrible shots. But
yeah, that's why Wiggins is really the X factor for this team. Like you said, Gabe, it can't stay where it is for him, right? He has to get better, but he's got to get his act together kind of quickly, man, because with him playing this bad, they're not going to be able to just skate by on Steph going berserk every night. He has to be better. I expect Clay to get better, but this might just be who the Warriors are now. They just might not be that super elite team anymore, and that's fine because they've ran the last decade of basketball. So they just might not be those guys at that level anymore outside of Steph Curry.
Yeah, it's going to come eventually, whether we like it or not, expect it or not. Eventually, these guys are going to start slowing down. And Curry's been great, but you're going to have to slow down eventually too. He's going to be turning 36 at some point this season. So eventually, it's got to come. The good news is.
Oh no! Do we lose that?
We don't get to hear the good news.
This seemingly is a thing of the past. All right.
What was the good news?
I think I'm good.
What was the good news? We didn't hear that.
They are 5-2 on the road. The good news is they're 5-2 on the road. So that seemingly seems to be figured out, which isn't shocking. Last year was such a weird anomaly for any team that's at least decent. Never mind such a experienced team like the Warriors, but at least that's solved. Now they're 1-3 at home, but are they going to have such an anomaly at home again? Very unlikely, especially as good of a home team they've been for so many years now. So at least that's been solved. Now we just need to hope there's not some regression from Clay and Wiggins. And I'm still buying in enough that I think there's still a good team here. Are they front runners? Probably not. but they're in with a shot as long as Curry continues to play as well as he does.
Yeah, I still think they're good as well. I'm gonna just have to backtrack on how I was feeling like a week or so ago about they might be like Denver's biggest threat. I don't know if they're that right now or if they're going to be that at all. Like, ask me like 40 games into the season how I feel about that.
Well, right now the biggest threat to Denver looks like Minnesota or Dallas, and to be like, yeah, Dallas is going to take down the Nuggets.
I just think
I like Derek Lively, but I mean Jokic puts everybody in a blender. But like,
you see what he just did to Şengün the other night? They won, but
that's the thing about Jokic is like you can have a good defensive big. You can have Bam Adebayo out there, and it don't matter.
He's one of like 3 players in the world or that we've seen. Like, there's really no such thing as a bad night for them. Like it's difficult. Like a bad night for Jokic is if he's turning the ball over a lot, and it's rare that he just has like a 7-8 turnover game. It's rare that we've seen like LeBron at his peak just have a bad game. Like a bad night for LeBron in his prime was like 23 points on like 9 of 20 something shooting. Like that's a bad game for prime LeBron. Like Jokic is one of those dudes. Like there's really no defensive game plan that you can throw at him that he's not going to be able to figure out and affect the game in a positive way. Like he's just that talented of an offensive player, man. Like it's a rare thing that we're seeing, and it's good to appreciate it while it's in real time because he's as special as it gets offensively at the center position, man.
Definitely is very, very special talent. Like you say against the Rockets the other night, like Şengün played pretty good defense that game, and just doesn't matter, man. Jokic is that type of guy. But we're gonna go talk about one of the teams that has one of the other best centers in the league, specifically on the defensive end, and that is the Miami Heat. They've now won 6 games in a row after their win tonight. This is with guys being seemingly in and out of the lineup between Hero, between Jimmy. Bam's been about the only constant. We all had concerns about them going into the year. Again, understandably so, because they've lost Gabe Vincent. They lost Max Strus. The only seemingly replacement was Josh Richardson in terms of a vet. They just seem to do it again and again. I'll let you start it off, Reek, but these guys just keep doing it. I don't know if they're sustaining it, but at least for the time being, they look like they're going to be a very good team, at least again in the regular season, once again.
It's that Heat black magic, man. They just find a way, man. They find a way somehow. It sucks that Hero got hurt because he was playing at such a high level offensively, but even without him, they still continue to find a way, like I did in the postseason last year. I got to give a lot of credit to Bam. Like we know Bam's a great defender, but I feel like it's even taking a step up this year. Like he should be in the like firm conversation for defensive player of the year. He's been that good. If he's not the front runner, like honestly, he's been that good defensively. And Bam's always kind of been like the guy that makes this team go really on both ends of the floor. So seeing his defense step up, like you know what you're gonna get from Jimmy, like in the regular season and stuff. But Bam being like their most impactful player night in, night out, is really what makes this team go. Can they sustain it? I don't know. Like this Heat team, always difficult to predict. We'll see. Like hopefully Tyler Hero makes a nice, speedy and effective recovery and everything because they'll definitely need his offense. But you know, when I saw them start 1-4, I'm like, this might be like a fall off year for them because they look rough those first 5 games of the season. But they figure it out, man. They just find a way to continue to figure it out. And you know, as long as they got Spo there, Jimmy's there, Bam, Tyler Hero, like they're going to be a threat. Like you don't want to see that team in the first round of the playoffs, no matter if they're a 4 seed or if they're or an 8 seed. Like you just don't want to see those guys. But I feel like Bam has been like the most outside of Tyler Hero. Bam on the defensive side just seems like he's taking like another step on that end of the floor, which is unprecedented for how good he's been in his career.
Yeah, Bam, he was another one of the guys who I wanted to put on my player shout-outs this week because he's been incredible. Like, just not only his scoring, but his rebounding. Like, the fact that in the last 4 games he has a 17 rebound game and a 19 rebounding game, like, that's That's some absurd stuff. And we talked about it last week because you had all like your categories, and I think one of them might have been related to rebounding, and Bam wasn't on there. And I'm like, dang, I feel like he's been so good at that, and he's only continued to excel there. And for him, like every year, we're like, yeah, Bam's gonna take that offensive jump. He's finally gonna do it. This is gonna be the year. And if what he's doing this year continues, like this will probably be the biggest offensive jump he's taken, because at least in quite some time, because 2020, 2021, he was up to like 18.7, then 19.1 the year after, then last year 20.4, and it's like been around that like 19, 20 range, but right now he's at 23, and with Hero out, that could only go up. And it's like, if we're finally going to see these big time scoring numbers from Bam, like that, not that it makes this team any deeper and fixes some of their overlying issues, but it's sure good. It's sure real promising. And so it's like, that looks really nice at them. The other thing I want to shout out with Miami as well that I noticed was probably going to butcher it, but I'm going to try my best. Jaime Jaquez.
Good job, Gabe.
I think, yeah, all right. Okay. Now that that's out of the way. Yeah,
what college did he go to?
Dude, I know this. Dude, I feel like I've definitely seen him in a college jersey. But
UCLA.
Blue school.
UCLA.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. But yeah, he had his first 20 piece, and it was in a win against Atlanta the other day. So I'd like to see that. Like he had his first real like breakout game, and if he can, not that he's gonna go out there and average 20, but if he can have some consistent offensive production for them, like that's big time stuff, because now with Hero getting injured, like that's something they need, and we know that they're always hurting for depth. So like if he can come in and be like this early into his career, be a guy that can actually contribute for them, that's a great draft pool for them. So I want to shout out him as well. But among their couple bright spots, it's like, yeah, I thought things were looking bleak for them as well, and for them to come out here and get some wins, never count out Miami. That's all you can say. Never count out Miami.
Never, man. We'll learn eventually. It's impressive how they just continue to piece this together. I'm glad you guys touched on Bam offensively and defensively. Really liked his improvements on both ends this year. The mid range has looked a lot better. He's 55% now from shots 10 to 16 feet out, 41% from anything further out to the 3-point line. And he's hit a 3 this year. It's only taken 2 of them, but he hit 1. So we'll take those. I don't know if we're going to see many more 3s from him, but just the fact that the mid-range shot is falling a lot more, the volume is up. He looks a lot more aggressive. He looks a lot more confident. It looks like we're seeing a lot more of what we saw in the finals from him last year. And that looked like peak Bam on the offensive end. And it looks like we're getting more of that, which is great to see. I like the Hawkhead shout as well. He's looked very good. The other guy I want to mention for the Heat that's really impressed me so far this year is Duncan Robinson, because we've seemingly now got to the point where he's back in the rotation and the 3s are going down. But he's doing a lot more than that this year. And we started to see that towards the end of last year, but we're now at the point where he's more than doubled his drives per game from last year. And he's genuinely not a significant threat, because this is still Duncan Robinson we're talking about. But from where he was, he's a guy now that if you chase him off the 3-point line, he can punish you a little bit. He can get it to the rim and finish a little bit. He has a bit of a floater. He had a play against Wemby the other night where he had a great move to the rim and got an easy look. And when you're doing that against Wemby, it's a pretty good sign that your handle's improved a lot. Your ability to finish at the rim has improved a lot. Great stuff from what we've seen from Duncan. Great stuff from this Miami team as a whole. Spoelstra just continues to need a ton of credit. And yeah, I don't know what's going on in this Warriors game. I definitely need to figure out what's going on out there, because the fact that we had a couple of guys out in sub 2 minutes is wild.
I really wish that we talked about this 5 minutes ago when we were on the Warriors. Bro, like, literally.
It seems like the frustration.
Clay, Wiggins, Draymond need to be better. Well, now Clay and Draymond ain't even playing it. Like, that is
doing Draymond type thing.
Hey, maybe listen, bro. You know, sometimes when like the coach gets themselves ejected on purpose just to hype up the team and like get some energy, maybe Draymond's like, yeah, like we need to get the energy out.
Draymond about to get suspended, bro. He just had Rudy in a mean headlock.
What's Rudy?
Yes.
Oh man.
No,
And it's crazy because like Rudy barely did anything. That's wild. That was built up, man.
motherfuckers hate Rudy, bro. I've been very prone to some Rudy slander in my days, but people hate Rudy Gobert.
I don't know if y'all
It's
pulled the
hilarious.
play up, but
I haven't yet.
McDaniels and Clay got like just tangled up, just running up the court and like started pushing, shoving. Rudy, it looked like Rudy just stepped in, was trying to like separate them, and then Draymond just come in, puts him in the meanest headlock ever. Rudy ends up on the ground, man. That's insane. Yeah, Draymond's about to hear from the league office.
Silver's pulling up with SUVs, bro. No way. That podcast episode is going to be elite.
I don't even know if Draymond still does the pod.
Content at this point.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Man, it's crazy. I was about to get off of Duncan Robinson.
Wasn't even in the altercation. Man, I was about to say, like, Duncan got the best stutter jab in the league.
Bro, because
Draymond out here choking people.
Duncan, that whole playoff run was kind of mean off the cuts, and I feel like I remember him getting a blow by on like Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown.
No, he was cooking. He was cooking Jaylen Brown, bro.
Bro, like, why was he getting blow-bys on cuts? He's getting cuts on. I'm like, bro.
I'm glad Dev.
The Celtics are supposed to be one of the best defenses, but
Jaylen Brown's supposed to be a great on-ball defense. I'm glad Dev mentioned that though, because
Mean Mug Duncan.
This was somebody that was out of the rotation for basically like a year and a half,
making $90 million.
The
contract actually looks decent
for Max Strus and Gabe Benson, and he's stayed down. Stopped podcasting, but he stayed down. He waited for his opportunity. His opportunity arrived, and now he's back playing good basketball. The Heat need him, and he's playing good, man. So yeah, they need that too.
This year. I ain't gonna lie. True. He probably not better than Max Strus. Max Strus has been nice in Cleveland, but
I haven't checked. I haven't really watched Cleveland recently. They're kind of unwatchable for me.
I ain't watched a ton, but
they've had a lot of injuries, which has been tough.
Yeah.
Him being able to make a shot instantly makes him good for that team.
Yeah, I mean, he hasn't. Yeah. I mean, he's improved over the last couple of games. He hasn't been shooting great, but he's been doing so many little things well for them. Not a great defender, but he's really been competing on that end. Really good on the glass this year. He's averaging 6 boards a game on a team that has Mobley and Allen, which has been really impressive. Making a lot of the smart plays on the offensive end, the smart passes. He's been a really welcome addition. He's been nice to see. But biggest thing for them, they just need health. Okoro's been out, Garland's been out, Mitchell missed a game, Allen's been out. They just need health at this point.
True, that's when Mitchell dropped 70 last year. Garland was out. Probably some other guys were out at the same time.
I think it was just Garland.
It was probably, just Garland is like on that team. That's a big part of the offense.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Very, very true. Yeah. I haven't watched a lot of games.
Mitchell has been cooking. Other than that, it's been been pretty whatever for the Cavs. It's been kind of what you'd expect, and they just need some health. But Donovan Mitchell has looked even better than he has last year, which has been great to see.
They were getting ran. They were getting ran by Sacramento. De'Aaron's first game back. That game wasn't even really as close as it looked, bro. Like the defense for it was just that game. I haven't watched a lot of Cavs basketball, but just in that game, defense didn't look too hot.
It's not looked as good as it was last year by any stretch. Again, like
Jared
they've
Allen
cut a lot of guys
man.
in and out, but like they're 18th in defensive rating this year. And even with a few guys in and out, there's no excuse for them to be that low. None at all.
Yeah. Defense is something that even if you're missing a couple guys, it's so built into the team that you can still tread water. But man, like Keegan Murray, he struggled to start the year. He was shooting the lights out. I think Kevin Huerter had a big game. De'Aaron was doing whatever he wanted, fresh off his ankle injury. Like it was rough. Sabonis was bullying. Like
Kevin Huerter, big game. Yeah, that's how you know.
Yeah.
He's been bad.
2 of the worst 3-point shooters in the league this season were getting off against the Cavs.
Yeah, I mean, if you're the Cavs and the way they are constructed, and you're not defending well, you're just cooked.
The Fro has to go.
There's just no chance.
The Fro has to go.
I don't know how much that would fix things. Like,
I don't know if it fixed things, but it's a switch up, and they're not going to get off Mobley, so they need to switch up something. That's the move.
I know they're dreading this upcoming off season.
Oh, they have to be. They have to be,
They're
especially
talking about that every day in the office.
They have to be, and they're in such a bad spot too, because if they're not going to trade him, evidently they're going to go to free agency with it. But if you lose him for nothing, you're so cooked. Like, their assets to then pivot anywhere is so limited. So they gave up every first that they could have to get him. Like, they're so limited. Like, they'll still be okay. Like, Garland, Mobley, and Allen is okay, but how do they improve their ceiling? How do they even get to a point where they have a decent bench again? It's just, they got to hope that he ends up resigning, but the way they're playing.
Begs the question, they might have been better keeping him. My dad said that a couple weeks ago. We're not trading for Donovan. I'm like,
yeah.
At first, I'm like, like it was an aggressive move. Like, they trying to, reach their ceiling. But yeah, hindsight, looking back, if they lose Donovan for nothing, they're screwed.
I sources are telling me, and by sources I mean just trust me, bro. Donovan Mitchell, he's probably going to be suiting up 41 games at Madison Square Garden next year. I'm thinking about it, man. Donovan Mitchell, Jalen Brunson, Julius Randle. Maybe Cleveland can get a sign and trade with RJ. Maybe they can get that.
I would keep RJ. Well, if I'm getting Donovan, I don't know.
I don't know who else they have under contracts. I don't remember if this is the last year of the Fournier deal. I think it is, but I'm not confident.
Has to be.
So in which case, I don't know what else they package.
Actually, for a guy like Donovan, I feel like somebody big, I feel like just to end up making it work money wise. I'm obviously not the cap expert. That's Devin, but
this is year 3 of Fournier's deal, so he has another year.
So that might have been a team option. I know they did a ton of team options around then. I'm pulling it up now, but I know they went really team option heavy around then.
Let's hope so.
Evan Fournier, it is a team option.
I forgot he was on that team.
So it's nice to have his money gone, but yeah, you won't be able to have him in a sign and trade. So Barrett's making $26 million next year. Randall's making 30. It's two guys that you'd look at to max money, because outside of that, Mitch is making 14, Josh Hart's making 18, and Dante's making 11.5. So you'd pretty much have to include all three just to make the money work. As it is, you'd still have to include Barrett and probably at least 2 of them to make the money work. So they're in a weird spot there to bring him in, but
I don't love it anyways, to be honest. Too small.
But Donovan Mitchell loves it. I'll tell you that.
Sure. Doesn't move me as much. I'm just thinking, why would they have signed Evan Fournier to that contract? Like, what did they see? Because he was bad in Boston. Like what did they see?
They thought it was a fluke, I guess.
They must have just had to throw some money at somebody to reach the salary. I don't know, because that was the same offseason. Was that the year before they signed Brunson?
That was before.
Yeah, it was the year before, because Brunson just got there last year. So this was the third year.
Because that was the big team option. That's how I remember. It was the team option summer. They gave Fournier a 4-year with the team option. They gave Burks a 3-year with the team option. They gave Derrick Rose a deal with the team option. There might have been another guy, but there was a few of them. Nerlens Noel might have been on that list too, I think. I think he was the other guy. So that was the big 2 plus a team option, or in the case of Fournier, 3 plus a team option summer for them.
That was the year that they were kind of mid. Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
Still, why Fournier? He was bad. He was so bad in Boston.
Very questionable signing, but the Knicks have been known to do a few of those. So
that's Jay's favorite player. Jay, bro, dude, NBA Addict TV, bro.
Shout out to my boy for hitting 1K subs, though.
Was Devin? Were you there when he was like? Did you see any of that when he just was slandering the shit out of Fournier?
Is this in the redraft or is this after the fact?
Yes.
Yeah, I was there.
We didn't take him in a redraft. Like literally, we did a full 14 pick redraft, and I don't remember what draft class it was, but like, bro, there was players.
2012, I think.
Bro,
13,
like there was players that were probably out the league by 2017. That Jay was like, yeah, I'm gonna take this guy over Evan Fournier. We're like, Jay, Evan Fournier averaged 20 in the league for like 5 years, bro. Like, what are you talking about? And he's like, nah, bro, that dude is ass. Just because he was bad on the Knicks.
I think he was 2013 draft.
He hates on D Rose crazy
2012.
too. D Rose was bad on the Knicks.
2012 draft. That draft was bad. Now that I think about it.
It was not great. It's definitely not great.
That was AD, Kid Gilchrist, Bill.
Dame
was 6. 4
Drummond was that draft, right?
Drummond was 2011. Fifth was Tom. Yep. Wait, no, you might be right.
That was 2012. Right. I'm pretty sure.
You might be right. Yep. Because Greg Monroe was 2011. I just looked at it the other day. Yep, you're right.
Right. Yep. Harrison Barnes was in that draft.
Who was pick 4? I'm trying to think. What team was it? What team was it?
Cleveland.
That is Dion Waiters.
Yeah.
Dion Waiters. That was
you just had to be there, bro. When Dion Waiters ate the gummies, you just had to be there.
Yeah, like Terrence, Austin Rivers, Myers Leonard, Jeremy Lamb, Kendall Marshall, John Henson,
Kendall Marshall,
Royce White, Mo Harkless, Tyler Zeller. Damn, 4 UNC players in the top 20. What the hell? Terrence Jones. Gabe don't even know. He don't know about Terrence Jones.
Can't say that I do.
Andrew Nicholson.
I do know about Andrew Nicholson. We talked about him.
Jared Sullinger.
Not impressed.
RP.
We need to get into we got to get into the Clippers talk, bro. I can't get down the random NBA player rabbit hole yet.
John Jenkins, Jared Cunningham, Tony Roten.
John Jenkins. That's a 2K created player, bro.
No, John Jenkins was a bucket in college, man. He was nasty. 2 Vanderbilt players in the first round is insane.
I don't even know one Vanderbilt player besides Darius Garland.
Perry Jones? You don't know nothing about Perry Jones, Gabe. He was the next KD.
That's former Raptor, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Perry Jones. Marcus
Bro, I was 9.
You're acting like I was some 16-year-old.
Man. 2012.
I got into basketball a little late, man. They weren't pushing basketball in Cincinnati, bro. Come on.
Jeff Taylor, so 3 Vanderbilt players in the top 31 picks is crazy. Damn, Thomas Satoransky might have been a lottery pick in a redraft. That's crazy. That's how bad this draft
borderline
is.
Definitely borderline lottery pick.
Hey, big guard, man. That's the new wave.
Chris Middleton in the second round, Will Barton. Tyshawn Taylor, that's a name I ain't seen in years. Mike Scott. My bad, man. This is just insane. Let's get to the Clipper talk, man.
We'll indeed get to the Clippers talk, and then we'll have our lovely after show. But life has been interesting in LA since James Harden's arrival. They've lost all 4 games with him. They've lost 5 in a row, including the first game before his arrival. Now, it's a lot to integrate. We know how Harden is. Of course, he had a statement when that trade went down, or him saying that he is the system. And that's how Harden's played for the majority of his career post OKC, is he's been the system. And so it's going to take some time. And it's also worth noting that James Harden, for the most part, has not had a preseason or a training camp. This is him getting going now. But even still, I'll get your thoughts first, Gabe. You have Kawhi, you have PG, you have Russ, you have James Harden. Only 4 games, but it's very much looked ugly, to say the least.
Name chasing. I am a bit surprised that it's been this bad. And the reason for that is that Paul George has played with Russ before, and we've seen it's working. It worked last year. Russ looked good on the Clippers. And Russ has played with James Harden before, so there's a bit of chemistry there. Now, Harden's play style was a bit different then. We know that was like 35 point per game James Harden, and not the new like 20 and 10 guy he's been the past like year and a half. But there's some pre-existing connections here. And so I thought it would be a little bit smoother, but when this is a team who's been pretty established, that's been a playoff team together with Russ for only 1 year, but the main core's been together for a few years. When you bring in a new guy and he says, yeah, I am the system, I am a system, that's just not going to work. James Harden is not that guy. And I don't know if he's just going to be able to accept a role. I think the classic story is, he comes to Philly and he's moving off the ball. He looks excited for a little bit, and then all of a sudden it's the same old thing. It's we're gonna play James Harden ball. We're gonna play the way I want to play, and that's just not gonna work. And I alluded to it earlier where I said he might get to his 2018 Melo arc where Melo was easily still talented enough to have a great place in the league, but he didn't want to accept a role. And because of that, teams couldn't find a good use for him. He wasn't making teams better. And eventually, Melo was able to come finish his career on his own terms because he accepted a role, and he shouldn't have even been out the league as long as he was. Like, that was kind of ridiculous, if I'm being honest. And I'm not going to say James Harden should be out the league, but I'm going to say the opportunities that are going to come his way, if he doesn't start taking a role, might not look so pretty. Now, does he care? I don't know, because James Harden's a made man. He's won an MVP. He's made conference finals. He's widely considered a top 5 player at his position ever. Does he have a ton left to prove besides getting a ring? Not really. But as far as what he brings to this Clippers team, it ain't good. And it's weird, too, because the main thing with this Clippers team for years was they need a primary playmaker like bad, man. Like, they had, like, guys that could get you some buckets on the wing. Big Zoo was cool as the 5. Plenty of guys who could defend. Powell's a bucket off the bench, They got a lot of guys who play a lot of different roles really well. But that real point guard who could really play make, that was missing. And James Harden ain't even doing that so far in the Clippers. Like 4 assists per game. I know he just got there, but like, bro, that's really the one thing that he could have provided that this team didn't already have. The scoring threat of James Harden, now that it is what it used to be, but even if it was, they got Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. They don't need that. So what, besides the name and him wanting to be there, what does James Harden add to this team? If it's not playmaking, what is it?
Not a damn.
I'll leave that to you guys. What is he adding here? What did they need him for? Because if he's going to come out here and average 4 assists, 2.5 turnovers, not high level playmaking, and I know it's a new system. And that's the law of averages. For the second time this episode, I'm saying the law of averages says that's going to get better. But if Russ is the better playmaker right now, just objectively the better playmaker right now, what's the point of having James Harden on this team?
Look, they took a page out of their city counterparts, the people that they share an arena with still in the Lakers. Like you said, Gabe, name chasing. A move that doesn't make much sense on paper, but you do it anyways while you're playing good basketball. It's asking a lot for asking Ty Lue to figure this out. And Ty Lue, I give him his credit. He's figured out a lot of stuff in his time being the head coach of the Clippers, man. Like, had the year where PG missed a lot of time, Kawhi was out the whole season. They were a game away from making the playoffs. They lost 2 playing games, but they were right there. Figured out a way. Figured out how to get to a conference finals when Kawhi went down. They figured it out. But, man, like, you're just asking him a lot to integrate another ball-dominant guy. You already got Kawhi Leonard. You already got Paul George. You brought in Russell Westbrook, who's been playing really well for them. And then James Harden is just not that type of player, even when he was at his peak, that could just fit in anywhere. Like, he's not that guy. Like, you have to accommodate a lot to get James Harden to be an effective guy, and that means the ball has to be in his hands a lot. And he's not elite enough at this stage in his career to have the ball in his hands over Paul George, over Kawhi Leonard, and even the way Russ was playing before the trade. Like, James Harden, to answer your question, Gabe, he doesn't add anything to this team. He's actually made them more of a negative. You know, obviously they haven't won a game with him so far, but just the cohesiveness that they already had been building. Kawhi looked good. PG looked elite. Russ was playing good basketball. Their supporting guys were playing well. They just seemed like a good unit before that trade. It just seems it was unnecessary. Like, when I first saw it happen, I was still at work just after Monday Night Football, and I just seen breaking news, and I'm like, okay. Even after I saw what they gave up, I'm like, okay. Like, it wasn't a needle mover. I don't know if they'll figure it out. It's going to take a lot, but they're going to look back at it and they're going to be like, damn, probably should have just kept what we had. And I think, to your point, Gabe, about like 2018 Melo, I think Harden is going to become like how Russ was viewed once he like got to LA with the Lakers and it wasn't working. And then it's like, oh, who's going to take Russ? And then when he finally did get traded and bought out, it's like, well, who's going to sign Russ? It's probably going to end up something like that. Like, because Harden's not going to change his ways. He's not going to become all of a sudden this effective guy without the basketball, or where he doesn't have to run 67 pick and rolls every single game to get his 10 assists. He's not going to accommodate to that. James Harden is what he is. He's been doing it for too long. He's not going to change. So the Clippers, they kind of like messed them, like they screwed themselves doing this. But that's what you get for name chasing. It never works in the NBA. Hasn't worked in a very long time. Just name chasing, just adding talent. It doesn't work. Like, there's a long list of teams that did that. 04 Lakers, 2013 Lakers. That's a lot of Laker teams. The Lakers just did it again with Russ. It doesn't work. So I just hate that they took a page out of that book when they were playing such good basketball before that. It was a panic move when they didn't have to panic because they were already a good team. And now they're going to have to cover up a lot of ground and figure out how to make this work very quickly.
Let me just highlight this real quick, and then I'll let you go, Devin, just because they're playing right now. That's what I was looking at. Game 5 of this now. Almost the end of the first half. James Harden, 10 shots. Kawhi Leonard, 6 shots. Why is James Harden putting up more attempts than Kawhi Leonard?
It's not even just that. They're struggling to break 100 points.
1 assist. He's not even passing the fucking ball.
They didn't score 100 on the Knicks. They didn't score 100 on the Nets. I don't know if they got it against Dallas, but they were getting beat by like 40 points. So who cares if they got it? Like, they were getting blown out.
And this is against Denver, so don't expect them to win the game.
No, it don't matter.
Why is James Harden taking more shots than Kawhi Leonard? He's a top 10 player in the world.
I don't care if it was Denver. I don't care if it was Detroit. I don't care who it is. They gotta. Anytime you have, I'm sorry, Dev, that we're talking.
You're good
all the time. But man, like, you gotta establish that pecking order, man. Like, every team, like, if you're gonna add these stars, there has to be stuff that's already understood. Who's the guy? Who's the second guy? And then after that, you got to figure it out, right? It seems like there's no pecking order. It's just a bunch of guys. Kawhi is fine being a corner guy now, which is like, Kawhi, when you're healthy, you're a top 5 player in basketball. Go get the damn ball. Paul George, when you're on, you're elite. You're damn near a top 10 player in basketball. Get the ball. Harden, you're just not him anymore. I love James. That's my guy. He's just not him anymore, bro.
Simple game, and you don't have the first step anymore. Get to the rim, take a step back three. If you get to the rim, get fouled. If he don't got that first step no more, it's not the same.
Bro, he can be a Steve Nash type of dude for just if he just bought into that role, like run some few pick and rolls here. Just be that guy, that smart, that Chris Paul type of dude. Like Chris Paul, if they went and got a Chris Paul, I would love that. Like that would be perfect. But James Harden is that type of playmaking guy. He can play make. He's a phenomenal passer, but the ball has to be in his hands. Has to be pick and roll stuff. He's just not that type of, oh, I'm going to get Kawhi easy shots now. I'm going to get Paul George easy shots in this spot. I'm going to get Norm Powell easy shots in this. It's not that. It's like you said, drive and kick, pick and roll stuff. And James just unfortunately is not as elite as he was in that phase of the game.
It doesn't make any sense. I mean, we knew it was going to happen, but this is a trade that if Russ is not in town, I can live with. But Russ brought him in. To his credit, he played well to end last season, played well into the playoffs. But that's the point guard they've been looking for. That's more the playmaker they've been looking for. That's the floor raiser they've been looking for that can stay healthy, and when Kawhi and PG is missing time, can help keep their floor high enough that they can at least get into the postseason. That was the move that I thought, okay, they're good now. They got their two stars in Kawhi and Paul George, and they got Russ as that point guard they've been looking for. Harden, it's just completely unnecessary. It's just so unnecessary. It now brings you in with two guys that want the ball in their hand at the point guard position, plus Kawhi, plus Paul George. And you know that Harden's not going to be significantly off ball, and we're seeing it already again tonight. Like you said, Gabe, he's taking more shots than your guy who you would ideally want you leading in shots in Kawhi. And if you could have Harden buy into a role, it'd be great. But like you guys said, that's just probably not going to happen because instead of now being an ideal scenario where Harden does still have some parts to the game where he is the offensive hub, whether that's pick and rolls with Zubac, whether that's the pick and rolls with Kawhi that they're experimenting with, which I think can actually be a very fun and productive combination. In an ideal world, there's a lot of possessions where Harden's just an off-ball spacer on the weak side, and that makes it very tough for defenses to deal with because you can't just leave Harden on an island. He's still a very good catch-and-shoot three-point shooter when he does it. It's very rare, but he has been throughout his career a very good one. The problem is now you have Russ doing that. Teams will let Russ sit in the corner. They ain't worried about that. Now Russ just becomes irrelevant on this team. It just now becomes that Russ is just there for the most part. I mean, if he's got some run with the second unit, he'll still have some value, but in that starting lineup where they're likely going to keep him, even though since the trade I've advocated for him to be on the bench, he's just so much less relevant than he was beforehand. It just doesn't make any sense at all. I don't know, man. This Clippers experiment is just chalked. Like it was chalked, and now it's even more chalked. And they didn't even really give up that much of value to get him, but just having him doesn't even make any sense. There's just no benefit here.
They gave up two dudes that weren't playing, and Nick Batum, who did play a lot for them and was cool for them. But it's unfair for Russ to have to be the one to sacrifice. Like it's just very unfair to him because came in midseason last year, found his way, was back to playing like basketball that easily contributed to winning, and he wasn't being scapegoated anymore. It's just unfair to ask him to just take that less role again when he's been so effective, and it's unfair to him, and it's so redundant getting James Harden. Like you said, Dev, it's like you're just adding another dude that is ball dominant, has always been ball dominant. And on top of that, you're not even getting to your two superstar wing players, which is like, it's a big issue, man. Like if Ty Lue figures this out and this team is like really competitive in the playoffs, that man might be like a top 2 coach in the league. Cause I don't know how he figures this out, man. And even like it just seems like it's like dragging on like the rest of the team. Like Zubac isn't playing as good. Like he's been kind of poor. Haven't heard much from Norm Powell. Terrence Mann's come back, but he hasn't looked fun. He hasn't looked good. It's like, man, it just seems like it's dragging like all the way up and down the roster. And man, this is a team that before the trade they were playing so good. Like, look, all of us, we were kind of like about the Clippers. We're very bullish on them. We're like, they'll probably make the playoffs.
I had him missing. I had him at
Gabe
9.
had him missing. I didn't have him that high. I don't think Dev had him super high.
I think we had him flip. I think because I had Dallas at 8, y'all had Dallas at 9, so we all had him like 8, 9.
We weren't high on these guys, but shit, the way they looked before the trade, I'm like, they might, if they can stay somewhat healthy, they might have a chance to make some type of noise. But now I'm back out on them. They're, even if they do make the playoffs, they're not gonna be much of a threat the way that this team is constructing and playing right now.
It's so poor. Like literal net negative. The fact that you can look at this team and say they were playing so good, traded for him, and now they look horrible, about to be 0-5, 6-game losing streak, in a tight Western Conference that you cannot afford to be losing these games, and the team that just got off of James Harden, the biggest piece of value they brought in was Nick Batum.
Rocco's been decent.
But when I say piece of value, like you said, he wasn't playing before he got there, so his value wasn't very high.
Yeah.
For that to be the return and for Philly to look like one of the best teams in basketball, I mean, there's other factors there, like, it's not like Philly just got off of him and is still playing with Doc Rivers. Like, they have a new coach. Maxey's a young guy getting better, but to say they got off James Harden, they look this much better instantly, and the Clippers look so much worse instantly. Like, James Harden is literally a negative. It's the same conversations we had with Russ on the Lakers. And it's not even – I don't even know if it's fit because Russ was, fit. Like, he went somewhere new.
I think it is, though. This is what I'm
about to say. Like, where is James Harden?
Because
where does he raise the stock of the team?
It's because you are – like Devin mentioned, you already have Russell Westbrook.
Yeah, it's not necessarily that Harden's fit is bad. It's that Harden influences the offense in a way that makes some of the other pieces now bad fits that they weren't previously.
So where does he work? Because obviously he didn't work in Philly either, and he barely worked in Brooklyn.
You could say he didn't work in Philly. We know James Harden stinks in the playoffs. Like, we know that. Philly was still the same team with James Harden in the postseason, though. Second round exit, they couldn't get over that hump. They were still the same damn team. Embiid elevated. Like, Embiid was able to elevate with James Harden even then. Maxey, even though it wasn't this explosive jump that we're seeing now, he still got better and stuff. But we know James Harden in the playoffs. Like, we know he's just not good, especially at this stage when the first step is cooked. Not as a lead of a off the dribble shooter. Like, we know he's not that good in the playoffs. So, given all that, the Clippers looked at. I think Lawrence Frank is still in charge. I think he's still calling the shots. Looked at everything they had. Looked at how they were playing, the pieces that they had. Looked at James Harden, his track record in the playoffs and stuff, and he still decided to make that move. I just think, like, it's a little is on Harden still, like, not being able to be a star player and find ways to adjust. That's on him. But we held Rob Pelinka hella accountable for the moves he made, name chasing. So Lawrence Frank got to be held accountable too for doing the same stuff. And the team was playing fine without James Harden. You're doing the same stuff. You're adding another piece that just does not make sense with the current state of the roster and what you gave up to get James. It just didn't make sense. And I'm sure anybody that watches basketball saw that and they're like, it doesn't really make much sense. And that's why, like, you gotta hold those guys making the calls accountable too, because there's no way you look at that and you're like, we're keeping Russell Westbrook, but we're also getting James Harden. What sense does that make for those two players at this stage in their careers? And you have Kawhi Leonard and you have Paul George. Like, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, sometimes we like say stuff like that and we're wrong. Like a lot of people said that about like the biggest example is when, ironically enough, James Harden and Chris Paul came together on the Rockets, and everybody was like, "That's weird. Like, is that gonna work?" And in that case, like we were wrong, but in this case, nah, we were right.
It's gonna take a hell of a coaching job or a hell of a buy-in by some guys, man. But it's tough to break those habits as a basketball player. Like James has been playing a certain way for pretty much a decade, playing the same brand of basketball pretty much. Might adjust a little bit here and there, like you said, like Dwight Howard comes into town, Chris Paul comes into town. I go play with Kyrie and KD. I go play with Embiid. He might change a little bit, but for the most part, James Harden's been the same dude. Russ been the same dude. Kawhi and PG, they're gonna do what they do, but you're asking guys to really like change a lot, and the NBA just doesn't work like that, man. Like pieces already have to make some type of sense, and then like small adjustments can be made. Like Kevin Love, oh, I'm a featured player in Minnesota, but now I'm gonna just sit in the corner. I'm gonna be a pin down guy. I'm gonna still rebound the hell out of the basketball. That's who I am. Chris Bosh, I was a low post guy. I'm gonna adjust a little bit. I shoot the mid range. Now I'm gonna step back, shoot the three a little more. Those things can be like if they're there, but like you can't ask James Harden to be a corner guy. He ain't never been a corner guy. You're not gonna ask Russell Westbrook to do that either because he can't do it. And then if you're asking Kawhi Leonard and Paul George to do that, you're just minimizing their talents. So as much as James Harden may be a negative, Lawrence Frank made a negative ass decision by bringing him in, and you just gotta call it what it is.
If it's to get over the hump in the playoffs too, like you said, how many times have you said in this segment alone, James Harden stinks in the playoffs? This team was good. This team had a very high floor, so if this was a ceiling raising move, that's questionable on its own. My biggest theory as to why James Harden doesn't work in the playoffs is just, I mentioned it earlier, the simplicity of his game. Like, I think once you're able to scheme for it for 7 straight games, like, and especially when we talk about James Harden in closeout games and how the deepest you get into the series, like, the deeper you go, the worse he gets. There's something to be said for that. A simple game of set a screen, try to get a first step, get to the bucket, get fouled, or take a step back three. It's simple. And
Very
when coaches can scheme against that, don't work. When the whistle gets tougher, and it's not as big of a thing anymore because he's just not as aggressive and doesn't get to the rack as much as he used to.
Yeah.
But when the calls would go, a lot of his effectiveness would go with that. And
I think he was better in Houston than like people credit him for in the playoffs, but like after the hamstring, it's just like he's been bad. Like his first year in Philly, he was poor, very poor.
in Houston, it was standout moments, I think, was the big thing, right? Like if you go look at his like macro scale numbers, like it probably looks fine, but it was
like you said, like
it was
them,
like
them closeout games.
Kawhi's out for the Spurs, and he loses because Ginobili blocks the shot at the end of the 80-year-old Ginobili blocks at the end of the game.
That was Kawhi was out for the game 6, right? And that's when Harden just had like he wasn't shooting the ball, like he just stunk. Like he took like
he was terrible. And then they literally got blocked by Ginobili to lose the game. Like stuff like that, or they missed 27 straight threes when Chris Paul goes out, and they literally have the chance to beat the greatest team of all time. And it's stuff like that, and it's those standout moments of why it's like, how do you even let this happen? That's why he gets slandered in the playoffs.
For sure.
The macro numbers definitely look better than why we remember him like that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, even last year was even a more polarizing version of that because he had like a couple of good games, but outside of those couple of good games, he was terrible. Like there was no, I'm getting a good game from James Harden. It was you're getting a great games from James Harden, or he might as well not be on the floor. The hell, you're better off with him off the floor at this rate in some games. Like it's so polarizing.
That Celtics series, like games 1 and I think it was 4, like he was the best player on the floor
Yeah.
But then every other game, he was arguably the worst starter on the floor, man. Like I think game 3, he just wasn't like he would get by his defender and like he would have the floater there, just wouldn't shoot it. He would have a layup, wouldn't shoot it. It's like, bro, you just scored 40. You just scored 45 like a couple games ago.
He plays one way. He just plays one way. And if it works, it works.
Either he empties the tank.
Work.
It's either he empties the tank or the tank's on E and he needs like 2 games to recover. It's just like, yeah. That's why Lawrence Frank doing this is just like, why? Like why would you make that call? Why would you make that call? And the Clippers, like they've made a lot of moves since getting Kawhi and Paul George. Like that jump started it, but they made a lot of in-season trades, a lot of in-season acquisitions. Like you go down the list, Rondo was an in-season acquisition. You know, Norman Powell, Mason Plumlee last year. Like they've made a lot of in-season moves. And that just like resets your entire continuity. Like you got to rebuild it. It's just,
I mean,
I just don't
they've
understand.
They've tried. They have not been able to put the pieces together at all. Yeah, it's a weird scenario, that's for sure. But like we said from the start of this, name chasing when you already got your stars. It is not the way to go about it, and Philly are showing the opposite end of that right now. That's for sure.
I feel like we just talked about the Clippers for like 30 minutes.
We probably did. That is probably the longest Clippers segment we've had in a minute that has not had a classic Gabe rant. So,
and it was not positive at all. Straight negativity.
Those days are over. Me, like, I was a Clippers enjoyer for a little bit.
No, you were a positive Clipper fan. Bro, I have a screenshot. It's on my desktop still if you win a Clippers jersey. Still got the screenshot, bro. Like you're never beating those allegations. You jump ship at the right time though. Jump ship at the right time.
I'm off the ship. Even my Raptors, they can require a last minute 23-point comeback to be one of the worst teams in basketball. But I'll still love them till the day I die.
Hey,
I at least have something to care about.
Pascal Siakam, man.
That was gonna be my big player shout out. When we talked about player shout outs, Pascal, he actually exists now. I was saying last week he just don't exist in the offense anymore.
I want to see him and Scotty have like a good game together.
Yeah, that's the ideal vision right now because it has not existed.
But he's looked a lot better. Like he looks like a basketball player now, and which is it's good because we know Pascal's good, and you know maybe like can either be beneficial to winning games or his trade value might look a little bit better if you decide to move off of him. So
I hope it's for the trade value because I still don't know if I love the way it looks like from like team wide. Like he's definitely been integrated more and he looks better personally, but like still his play style of like more of the ISO touches and things of that nature, like I still don't love it. If it goes in, it's like great. That's wonderful. But it definitely has a ceiling to it. And like you mentioned with like him and Scotty not being on at the same time, I like the way the offense looks better when it's ran through Scotty and Dennis than when it's ran through Pascal, even when Pascal's actually having a big night. So if it just gets his trade value up and then that's that, cool. I don't think he's getting that extension. There's a lot of guys who I don't think are going to get the contracts that they think they're going to get. At least, like we talked about Clay earlier.
Patrick Williams.
Clay, whatever. I don't know. When James Harden needs a new contract, he ain't getting the money he probably thinks he's going to get.
Mid-level exception.
It's like, hey, because that's what Russ. You made the comparison to Russ, where it's like, oh, you know, he finally got traded, bought out, then like things look a little bit better. Like, yeah, Russ was making $40 million before he went to the Lakers, and
Russ took a pay cut. Like, y'all gonna do this to him, man?
Yeah. But bro, before the Lakers, like directly before the Lakers, like Russ looked damn good in Washington, in Washington, and then just being on the Lakers made him become a mid-level exception guy.
Shout out to the Lakers. Yeah, all of my player shout-outs already got mentioned. We talked about Tobias. Mills said in chat Jordan Hawkins. It's gonna shout him out.
Bam was a big one for me, and then I'm happy I could shout out Jaime Jaquez.
My bias was Sam Hauser shooting the lights out.
Bam, Pascal, Jalen Green. Jalen Green was one who I'm happy I could highlight here in the Rockets stuff because he
I just said Jalen Green because I haven't really I watched a
couple
Rockets games.
I've been critical of him.
I feel like I haven't noticed him too much when I've been tuned in. Like, I'm glad I'm gonna keep an eye out for him.
But he
Denver game, he's been really
numbers
efficient.
Up. He put some numbers up. He's like a 40% 3-point shooter so far this season on 5 attempts, I think. So
you see what structure does to young players? Like,
that's what I'm saying. It looks better.
Talent is still there. They can play.
It's like even if he doesn't continue looking great, it's like he can play on a team that's doing stuff. It's not just give him the ball, he'll force something and end up putting up some numbers. He can put up numbers that translate to greater team effects.
Yes.
Definitely. Oh, it's been nice to see. Two of my 3 shoutouts got mentioned earlier. Bam was one of them. Nickeil Alexander-Walker was the other. A third, critical of him this offseason, and I basically said he shouldn't be in the rotation, but Tim Hardaway Jr. has been shooting the ball really well so far to start the year. Him and Karis LeVert have kind of been leading the way for bench scoring, and that by default means they're going to be in the 6th man of the year race, and I can't really blame them at this rate. So Tim Hardaway Jr. He's been shooting well.
I can't cap. Dwight Powell's been okay.
He has been okay.
He's been okay, man.
He's been an okay backup center.
That hurt, man, but he's been okay. Lively's still better, but Dwight's been all right. He's been cool.
He's been okay. Nurkic has still been terrible since game 1, so I can still talk my shit about him. But
we really hopped on here because we did a Wednesday pod that week after opening night. We said Nurk looked decent.
We saw 3 positive Devin tweets about Nurkic in 24 hours, and then he's back. I think Nurk saw those tweets. He's like, okay, I cleared my name. Let me go back to being trash.
Bro,
you can't fool me, Nurk.
I have one more allegation to push. Tyrese fucking Halliburton is him, bro. You guys called me crazy in the offseason for saying that he was the 6th best point guard in the league. What are we doing here?
You think that was too low? He's been better than Dame.
Spade is spade, man.
It's too early. You're too early. You're jumping the gun with Tyrese a little bit. No, I wasn't. He's that good. And the Pacers are literally one of the best offenses in basketball. The last couple games, he has 32 straight assists without a turnover. Efficient as playmaker. Playmaker. He has a 40-point game in the last 5 games. He can score the ball too. 20 and 10 guy. Yeah, he might be a 20 and 10 guy, but he can pop off. He's not limited from scoring perspective. He can shoot the fuck out of the basketball. Tyrese Halliburton is fucking him. I'm tired of this shit.
Well, I'm gonna let you cook, man.
He's so good, and I got slandered to all hell in chat. I got slandered to all hell. Don't forget this shit. I got slandered. They killed me. You guys killed me. You guys killed me.
We did ridicule you, man. We did.
Tyrese was not only better than Trae Young, but also just this good. And listen, you can say, you even said in the group chat the other day, taking victory laps in November. Don't care. Don't care. Because listen.
Heard you.
There's nothing about Tyrese's game that says it's not sustainable. Because he did it last year. He didn't do it to this level last year, but he showed that he was consistent last year. And he's still consistent, just at an even higher level.
Where does he go in a redraft? Does he go
24 and 12? 24 and 12 on 50, 40, 90? Are you fucking serious?
Where does he go in a redraft?
That's tough.
You take him over LaMelo?
I wouldn't still.
That's interesting.
I wouldn't. It's close, but I'd still take LaMelo.
He's firmly 3.
I'm taking Hallie because LaMelo does not stay healthy.
Halliburton doesn't either.
Halliburton doesn't either. Yeah, it's a mute point. Yeah, I think he's firmly top 3 unless you want to make an argument for Maxey, which you could.
I would take Halliburton over Maxey. You know, Maxey's been
really. I would take Maxey and Halliburton over LaMelo. I've also seen this stuff like Maxey. I've seen Maxey literally look like the best player on the floor in an entire playoff series. Like that first round series against the Raptors, like he was insane.
LaMelo's really, really good, man. Like
I know I'm lower on.
I think
LaMelo
it gets overstated because the Hornets
done shit while he's been there.
Yeah,
they're just.
But he had them boys at a 43-win season with a bad with Mason. I keep saying Miles Plumlee. Mason Plumlee as a starting center, like had them boys 43 wins.
LaMelo is in basketball hell, but Charlotte, we're gonna have that conversation at some point. That is
no disrespect to Halliburton, no disrespect to Maxey. I think if you plugged in LaMelo, like those teams would still go at a very, very good rate.
Agreed. And
that's no disrespect. I think all 3 of those guys are phenomenal. They're amazing players.
The consistent efficiency that comes with Halliburton is just like the passing efficiency, the scoring efficiency, all that. Like, I'm taking that over LaMelo. LaMelo's a crazy playmaker, insane playmaker, especially in transition. Big guard, so I mean he has that over Halliburton. Even if they're both bad defenders, like LaMelo has more potential to be decent there.
Yeah.
So like, there's reasons to take LaMelo. You might see a little bit more explosive scoring, even if Tyrese is a bit more consistent.
I don't think you're crazy for saying that. Like,
no, I think you can.
There's
all 3 ways.
It's just like I've seen Halliburton do a little bit more. Like when he was in last year, the Pacers were good. They look really good this year. And LaMelo, it's not all his own fault that he's been in Charlotte with. It's the same shit I said about Trey, where it's like, if you plug Trey into this situation, like they'd be just as good. And it's like, I haven't seen Trey in that situation. And so like, will he? Like I'm relying on like a what if.
Yeah, you can say that, but I mean, like I just said, he had them at 43 wins.
And so that
was a weird year in the East. A weird year in the East where 43 wins get you the 10th seed. Like that's just how it was. A very weird season.
Very rare.
Any other year, any other season, you're probably a 6 seed with 43 wins. Like,
yeah.
So I don't know.
I guess if you want to go purely on, because in a redraft, if you want to go based off ceiling, still projecting somewhat,
I'd probably still go LaMelo.
I can see the LaMelo argument because I think like Tyrese, he's great. I obviously am pushing hella Tyrese propaganda, but I don't know if he gets that much better than where he is now. Like 24 and 12, and say that goes down to like, I don't know, 22 and a half and 11. I don't know if he gets above like the 25 and 12 or something for like peak, right? So like LaMelo's ceiling might be higher than that, especially from like the rebounding side, like hell of a rebounder for a guard.
Potential defensive, maybe decency.
Defensive potential. So like if you go off the potential and like what his ceiling is, I can give you LaMelo. But as far as what they are right now and what I've seen them do, I'm gonna give it to Hallie because this Pacers offense is just fucking ridiculous. Maxey though, like I think saying like Maxey, like I gotta put Maxey right there with him, just because I've seen him like do it in a playoff series. Like he's literally like the way he did the Raptors in that first round series. I can't forget it.
That's an elite top 4 in that class.
That is very elite.
And I'm trying to like the rest of that class wasn't that like Bane's probably like maybe 5th.
Bane's up there. Devin Vassell's up there.
Vassell. That's a hell of a top 6.
I don't know if there's anyone else really in that core. Yeah, like, that is a very good top
Emmanuel quickly is probably like one
quick
of the
IQ.
guys.
Yeah, okay.
Okongwu.
Yeah, that class was kind of
Cole Anthony is a pretty
Jaden
consistent producer. Josh
Jaden
Green.
McDaniels should be up there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
He'd be up there.
You said Cole Anthony. I'm thinking. I feel like there's somebody else picked in like that range, like the 20-ish.
Did I say Sadiq Bey already? Precious Achua, like he's around there. Zeke
those are
Naji,
solid dudes.
Beef Stew.
Okay, yeah.
Jalen Smith has been an actual NBA player after not being for like the first two years of his career.
That's a really decent class. That top 6 though.
Trey Jones. Did we say Trey Jones? He's real decent. He's real decent. Isaiah Joe. He's real decent. Those are guys that were deep in the draft too. They got Nav, Jalen Harris, Raptor legend.
That's a nice class.
B-Ball Paul was 58. Dang,
that top 6 could probably go like punch for punch with a few draft classes.
Most drafts.
Definitely.
Killian Hayes has been an NBA player too.
He's been okay.
He has been okay.
I can't believe it.
He's not number one player, number one prospect like Kevin O'Connor's thought, but he's been okay.
He has been okay. I'll give him that.
It kind of sucks because as a guy who wants to see Jaden Ivey thrive,
he's done. He's done there. I'm sorry. I could see him getting traded like deadline. I'm not even playing, bro.
Who, Ivy or
I think that Ivy. I think that relationship is like. It seems like it might be beyond repair already.
Did I miss something? Why is it so bad?
Your guess is good as anyone else's. DMPs. Yeah.
He just played 8 minutes the other night, and Sasser played like 20. Killian played like 25.
It's very weird.
He deleted all of his Piston stuff off his IG.
Monty showed up, and that was it.
Gabe, he's been out the loop, man. He has been.
I knew he wasn't getting. So yeah, I knew he wasn't getting a lot of burn like versus last year. Like I knew, like he's consistently been off the bench. Like when I watch Pistons games, I don't notice him that much. I just know there was like a behind the scenes reason. Like if I watch a Pistons game, I'm like, okay, it's Cade, it's Killian. I see Sasser come in. I'm like, where the fuck is Jaden Ivey at? I didn't know there was like a behind the scenes thing going on.
If my guess was, I might have mentioned this last week too, because I feel like we talked about it last week. But Monty, even though he has that 5-year deal, he's been playing championship type basketball, coaching that for the last few years. He's probably in the mindset like, even if we're going to be bad, we're going to try our best to win some damn games. And I feel like he likes more what he sees from Killian as far as like competing defensively. That's the main thing, competing defensively, than what he sees from Ivy on a night-to-night basis or whatever he's assessed from Ivy as far as training camp, preseason, early stages of whatever games he's played. I feel like that's the big reason. And Sasser does a lot of that effort on defense, and he's been a pretty good offensive player too. He sees that and it's like, there's no minutes for Ivy. I think that's just how Monty sees it. It's a new coach. That's not his guy. The only guys that he's really committed to is Cade and Jalen Duren. Everybody else, like, that's really fair game. He wasn't there to draft pretty much anybody. So he has no ties to Jaden Ivey, and I just think that's how I assess it. I could be wrong. Maybe it's something else, but that's how I look at it.
You are the Detroit guy. You're the insider. So
I don't have any insight on them, but that would be my guess. Like, just like you got like Monty, veteran coach.
It's just so hard to believe. He had a promising rookie season. Like, I mean, rookie guards are never efficient, but like he was able to produce in a limited role this year. Like, just looking at the surface level stuff, like his efficiency, 5 less shots, but skyrocketed.
Yeah, I'd imagine it's a lot of what you've mentioned, Reek. It's the defense, it's the decision making, and the lack of control at times on offense. He just gets a little bit erratic and does a little bit too much on offense compared to a Sasser, compared to a Killian Hayes. Throw Alex Burks back in the rotation now that he's healthy too. Different type of player, but someone they have to give minutes to for as good of a shooter he's been, and how they just don't have shooting. So it's tough with what Monty probably wants right now. So we'll see. I mean, like you say, if this continues, they're going to have to move him because his value ain't going to get any better sitting on the bench. So
I was thinking, because I know y'all as Raptors fans have just been thinking about like point guards and stuff. It was something around like Ivy for like Gary Trent. Maybe you throw in like Joe Harris because maybe that makes them. I don't know. How would y'all feel about that? It just popped in my head randomly like a few days ago.
it's interesting. I don't know how much it solves. I think it's another, like, not that Ivy's a terrible 3-point shooter, but it's not exactly line his cap on a perimeter shot, much more of a get downhill type of guy. I don't know how many problems that solves. If you're going full rebuild,
that's the thing,
then I'm with it. But if it's just like we're trading Gary just to reshuffle some pieces,
I was thinking in the sense
doesn't
like
really do anything.
I'm thinking of it since like Pascal, you're trying to shop him, and maybe that offer comes like maybe you do trade Pascal, but you don't get like how you guys were talking last week, like that point guard that you want back.
Yeah.
Maybe that's like a secondary move to get that guy. Like that's kind of how I was thinking of it.
Yeah.
Gary being the first domino to fall is just like, because that means most of like
that's lateral.
Like if Pascal and OG are both still there, like what's the point in getting a guy that you're going to develop? When you said like maybe bring in Joe Harris too, my ear did perk up a little bit. I'm like, ooh, pure shooter? Hold on, wait a minute, might be onto something there. But as far as just like for Ivy being the main thing, like I said, I'm a Jaden Ivey supporter, but I don't think that's I don't know if that's the situation.
Yeah,
I like Ivy too.
I like his game. I wouldn't be sold on a fit with him and Scotty. I don't know how that duo works. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, but I wouldn't be sold on it initially at least, but we'll see. That's a situation. We'll have to see how that unfolds too, because I find it hard to imagine he either A, stays out of the rotation as much as he has, and if he does, then he just stays on the bench. It wouldn't make any sense.
It reminds me a lot. Reminds me a lot of Dennis Smith Jr. His second year in Dallas.
Yeah.
There's kind of some parallels here. You feel me? There's a little bit of parallels because Luka comes in. Cade wasn't really there much last. He played like 12 games last year. Cade's back. Ivy had pretty much free reign last season to do whatever the hell he wanted. Now Cade's back. This is Cade's team. This is his offense. That in part was already gonna not phase Ivy out, at least what we thought. But we obviously know he's not gonna have the ball in his hands as much because Cade's that good. And then all the other things, new head coach on top of it, that just kind of continued the phasing out of Ivy. And now it's to the point where we're talking about a top 5 pick, probably about to get traded in a year or two after having a pretty good year one. Just crazy.
That's what's really crazy, because usually when you see guys like that are about to be off the team that early on, it's like guys that just did like Josh Jackson, like
Thomas Robinson,
Dragon Bender,
Derek Williams.
I don't know, like James Wiseman was honestly out pretty quick.
Marquise Chris wasn't in Phoenix that long.
But like for a guy to average 16 and really not look like a bust at all.
It's interesting. It's something, man.
It's definitely interesting to say the least. Well,
he's got so much potential.
Definitely, I loved what I was seeing from him at the end of the year. I was making the all rookie first team push for a reason, but I don't know, man. Clearly, they don't see it right now, I guess.
I think one of us had him off of first team. Might have been me, to be honest.
Might have been. I don't remember who it was, but I know I had him first team. I don't remember other than that.
I don't even remember last year's draft. Keegan, Paolo,
Kessler.
I think I had him on first team.
And then Mathurin was in there.
I think I had
Mathurin. I left off. That was the first.
Oh, I probably left Ivy off then because I was a Mathurin guy.
But you're an Ivy guy too.
I'm an Ivy guy, but I was really pushing that Mather and propaganda crazy.
That is true. That is true.
Damn, that draft feels like so long ago.
Definitely does not feel like a year ago.
I remember being in the hotel in Florida. I had streamed the draft the day before, and then we recorded the pod the day after. I remember that. That feels like a long time ago now. I think about it.
Dude, I was in your draft stream. I was driving to Link's house. It was a nice little 5-minute drive. I was in Reek's chat. About to get into some scandalous activity. I do remember that.
Chat was jumping. He was jumping for that stream.
Nah, chat was jumping. I was sad I had to leave, but got the shorty.
Stream damn near the whole draft because I was on vacation, but I'm like, yeah, I like streaming the draft. I had done it like a couple years in a row. Like I enjoy streaming the draft.
That was a suppressed memory. I forgot about that.
I did too for a second. Yeah.
Definitely feels like a minute ago, that's for sure. But I think unless we got anything else to add, I think we'll think about wrapping it up.
I'm cool with that.
Hold up. Let me look at the scores that are going on right now in these games so I can give one last wild reaction.
Nice little Tuesday 3-point weekly recap.
A lot of games on for it too. I guess because it's in-season tournament play. But
yeah.
Okay, James Harden has turned it on a little bit. Still don't care. The Warriors are winning despite having nobody playing. Because
Brandon Podziemski has 17.
Yeah.
Dario and Brandon are
was that real that he scored 8 points in a minute?
I'm not sure.
Fake, man, because I kept seeing that screenshot.
I did see that. The Lakers are destroying the. Okay, yeah, this is my take. Is the Grizzlies are down 20 at halftime, with their leading scorer being Santi Aldama. It's over.
Santi.
Yeah, unfortunately for Grizzlies fans, Smart is out with an injury tonight, and it does seem
you guys fucking killed me.
Game, and he's not returning. So
you guys killed me. You killed me for the Halliburton take. You killed me for the Grizzlies at 10.
Did we kill you for that though?
Bro, chat was on my ass.
Chat was, but you had good points. Like,
chat said,
you had a valid argument.
Chat said, get this man off the pod. Take away this man's platform.
That was Jamil. Solely Jamil.
Bro. Hey, I got my first hate comment the other day. They said that guy Gabe does not have a clue talking about the Celtics. That wasn't all the way sold. All my concerns about the Celtics were based on the postseason. I knew they were going to be good in the regular season.
That guy Gabe doesn't know what he's talking about.
I don't know ball.
I haven't checked any Rockets videos. I wonder if those fans spun the block, because if I was them, I would have came back and
I haven't seen anything on 3-point weekly, but funnily enough, my Rocket shorts, not my video, but my shorts have had a bunch of people commenting on them on my main channel the last week.
Man, they should, man, because we really slammed them in the off season, bro.
So valid. There's a reason why there will be a video at some point on my channel that is I was wrong about the Houston Rockets. Like, it's
thinking about it too.
So deserved. So
Dylan Brooks won the divorce, bro. The Grizzlies fucking suck. They are horrible.
Dylan Brooks film breakdown coming soon.
The Lakers have been good, but they ain't been great.
Yeah.
But they ain't been. But that keyword, they ain't been great.
The Lakers have been mid.
They've been okay.
They've been mid.
They've been all right.
The Grizzlies.
But they losing by 20 to the Lakers at halftime.
They've been mid, but the Grizzlies stink.
The Grizzlies been bad, and it looks like Smart might be out for a little bit. So tough times in Memphis, to say the least.
You know what? Tank the season, man. Get a top pick. Build from there. You're still a young team.
Anything else on the recap, Gabe, or is that everything?
No, that was just I was right about the Grizzlies.
Obi topping 27 points, man. The MIP campaign, it's gonna start heating up.
It's coming, man. It's coming.
I was right about Tyrese, and I was right about the Grizzlies. That's my take, guys. Thanks.
Oh no, Gabe. What are your thoughts on Trae Young's masterclass?
A broken clock is right twice a day.
There it is, folks. That's what you get from Gabe to end it off this week. But we appreciate your guys' continued support. If you haven't yet, be sure to hit that like button down below and do subscribe for the channel for more content throughout the week and our stream again next week. But until then, we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.